Handheld gaming used to provide unique worlds and experiences that you simply couldn't get anywhere else. Nowadays, there's a much bigger push to simply take the games that you play on the big screen, on a monitor, whatever that console may be, and take them on the go, which is great. But when portable systems like the Game Boy, the Game Gear, PSP, they're all trying to build up their great exclusive libraries alongside the home consoles, it really brought on this large lineup of games from recognizable franchises that were all different in a wide range of ways. The reality is, no matter how much you may have enjoyed a lot of these games, it was very clear that the big companies were saving all of the big money for the next big console release, while the handheld releases were all uniquely experimental in regards to mechanics, overall budget, even who developed it. Ratchet & Clank on PSP was not made by Insomniac like the main games were. The Mario and Luigi series showed a side of this franchise that you couldn't get on console, and hell, sometimes you would even get the inverse, with handheld Pokemon being the main thing while the consoles got exclusively weird stuff. Like, God, Pokemon Channel, that was a weird piece of software right there. Point being, handheld gaming and console gaming, despite how some companies are trying to market them, were two totally different worlds. Up until, like, the Switch and the Steam Deck decided to show up and change the entire game. I guess, literally. And of course today, we're talking about The Legend of Zelda. You know, for the majority of this series' life, a lot of people were making the arguments that these games were just too similar to each other. From Ocarina to Wind Waker to Skyward Sword, doesn't matter, say whichever one you want. They were far too derivative, and Nintendo can't make an original Zelda game to save their lives. I think that was often said by people who just simply like to complain, but it is what it is. On the handhelds though, that couldn't be any further from the truth. Assuming the Switch's console handheld hybrid idea is here to stay, then we can officially cap off the portable Zelda lineup at 7 games, at least 1 per console generation. Of course, this is simply referring to the proper adventures here, not like the classic NES series ports of Zelda 1 and 2, those are pretty self-explanatory. There's Hyrule Warriors, that got a 3DS port for some reason, always forget Legends exists. Can't forget about Game & Watch Zelda, conveniently ported to Game & Watch Gallery 4, that's nice, you know, game preservation and all that. Of course, there's the Game Watch Zelda, not to be confused with the Game & Watch Zelda, this is simply Game Watch Zelda. What, you didn't know about this? Oh my god, you fake fan. Also not to be confused with the newer Game & Watch Zelda, giving us the worst way to play a few classic Zelda games, and also Vermin for some reason. There's the Link to the Past GBA port that features a handful of changes and even a brand new side quest and dungeon, that's pretty cool. Of course, there's both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask for the 3DS, which feature a ton of changes, so much so that people prefer the 64 Majora's Mask to the 3DS one. I am not that person, but hey, they still exist, and therefore, they're pretty cool. All I'm trying to say here is that portable Zelda and home console Zelda were two very different things that just so happened to have a lot of elements overlapping. Yes, the console games were changing things up visually with each installment, and each one is great in its own right, but it was on the handhelds where almost every single adventure was created to be different than the last. As for the multiplayer games like Four Swords and Triforce Heroes, as well as those weird-ass Tingle games for the DS, well, stay tuned. Those games are gonna get their time to shine in the future. Just be patient. I got a lot on my plate for this one video as it is. So today, I want to show some appreciation for some of the Zelda games that really helped define Nintendo's handheld legacy. And naturally, there is no better place to start than the very beginning. The Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls. Oh what, I'm sorry, were you expecting something else? I'll never miss an opportunity to talk about Frog Game. Many people do know this story by now, but let's quickly jump forward to Link's Awakening, a game that breaks many conventions of the typical Zelda format, including a bunch of references to other Nintendo characters. Yoshi, Dr. Wright from SimCity, and even Kirby, man. Hell yeah, dude, there he is. But of course, partway through your adventure, there's that one house featuring a character named Prince Richard, surrounded by a bunch of frogs with a unique theme song to accompany him. It's not like Richard has much to do with the plot, he tells you to gather some items from the castle nearby, and after doing so, Richard will give you a dungeon key, and then you move on, and that's about it. And alas, Richard was not an original character. He's from this Game Boy game that never left Japan. Thank God for fan translations, man. Now the game is readily accessible, and it is so worth it. The kicker is, before playing it, I thought Richard was the main character, but no, he's not the main character of this game. It's that random assist trophy little guy in Smash that can turn into a frog and a snake. That's the main character. Prince Sable. That unique and abstract narrative with a quirky sense of humor that really helped Link's Game Boy debut stand out is in full force here in Frog Game. It's just a lot easier to say Frog Game, I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, it's a plot that has you being cursed so that if you fall into water, you turn into a frog. I figure the whole part about this game having a unique narrative is pretty obvious. In general though, it is a pretty simple story about needing to save Princess Tiramisu, and the story has you traveling through different towns, defeating many enemies with quote-unquote combat, which is really just you going into this big old dust cloud and hoping you do more damage than your enemy does. It is exactly how the assist trophy handle things. And that is amazing, actually. And also, a whole lot of side-scrolling platforming. Yeah, the top-down stuff is pretty Zelda-like in that it's a lot of exploration and learning what paths to take and what not to take, but the plentiful dungeons and caves in this adventure are actually all platforming-based, and it feels surprisingly solid all these years later. This is a really fun game to play. It doesn't feel like it's dated in the slightest. But while the main mechanics in this game are definitely sound, it's all about what exactly you're doing. Like, eventually you free a woolly mammoth and you have to take it down. That's, for some reason, I don't know, I just think that's funny. And this is hours after you take a boat ride to an island to visit Nintendo headquarters to get help from a scientist that will only trust you if you also like sushi with a lot of wasabi. God, and the music is incredible too. Like the main theme song when you're exploring the overworld, it's so damn good. Listen, this isn't an adventure that is as open and sprawling as a typical Zelda game. It's mostly a pretty linear affair, but knowing how different of a vibe the Game Boy Zelda games would have in the years to follow, and to know that that influence started here, it's really cool to see that this is an adventure that stands out on its own, and it's still a ton of fun. Not many Game Boy games have held up over time, but easily this game does, and it will never not be a damn shame that Nintendo did not localize this back in the day, and yet they published stupid Mickey Mouse magic wands. God, I'm mad now. The origins of the handheld Zelda lineup, starting off with a different project that is totally independent with Frog Game, is actually very similar to how the Mario and Luigi series started with a different project as well, with Tomato Adventure. And I can't speak for everybody here, but something about seeing where these series roots really started from with a fully fleshed out game that's really good, I think that's really cool. Frog Game, highly recommended. Of all the handheld Zelda adventures out there, Link's Awakening is easily the one with the strongest reputation. Not just for being a new entry in the series, but this time on the Game Boy, ooh. It's as I mentioned before, this adventure lacks many of the core ideals that this franchise was built upon. Granted, this is only the fourth game in said franchise, the second of which was already a very weird one, but still. Here we have Link waking up on the mysterious Koholint Island after a shipwreck, and we have a ton of secrets to be uncovered in this weird new place. And while a lot of the core gameplay did remain similar, you know, you get your sword, you'll go through dungeons, you'll find familiar enemies, etc, the world that you inhabit and the characters within could not be more different. There's no Triforce, there's no Ganon, and weirdest of all, no Zelda. You do still get items to help you out along the way, but for the first time ever, you can have a loadout where neither button option is your sword. Granted, this is more so due to button limitations than them wanting to actually go about this way, but hey, it led to some new puzzle opportunities like combining your dash with the jump for some high-speed platforming, which is extra helpful for the many side-scrolling sections, injecting a little bit of Zelda 2 into a more traditional top-down Zelda format. There's also this level of self-awareness with the villagers too, like there are these two kids playing catch that tell you how to save the game, before also saying that they don't even know what that means. You'll find this father in his house who will warn you that he will be lost later on in the game. And sure enough, he is. This thing, like, okay, so there's this weird little wiggly enemy, you know, his name is Kookman, by the way, found that out, that will zap you if you slash it, and when you do, it'll say a comment, like, it can display millions of polygons. You can steal an item from the village shop if you want to. All you gotta do is grab the item and spin around a few times, and then when he's not looking, boom, you're gone. But the thing is, if you do, the next time you walk in, the shopkeeper will kill you, and then your save file will permanently be labeled as thief. That is amazing. And that doesn't even include all of the Nintendo references that I mentioned earlier. Like, dude, Kirby's here, man. Of course his game is great. Oh, sorry, his name is Anti-Kirby. Ooh, whatever. Still perfection. Dude, like, Wart is in this game, and he sings to you. It's crazy. Koholint Island is easily the wildest world Link has ever explored, especially once the story really starts to unfold. You see, the only way for Link to escape is to gather all of these magical instruments from the dungeons, and wake the windfish on top of the island's tallest mountain. However, it is slowly revealed to you as you're defeating the bosses that doing so will allegedly cause the island to disappear, as well as all of the inhabitants. It really makes for this interesting dichotomy where the world has some of the most charming elements in the entire series, but the quest is all about working towards a goal that will eliminate all of it. And I'm sorry, I took Marin out on a date and watched her sing the Ballad of the Windfish in front of a bunch of little animals in their own little animal village. I want to be with her for the rest of my life. But that is realistically all window dressing for this adventure. When you really boil this game down to just the gameplay, then, yeah, it's It's a top-down Zelda game, alright. Traversal does hit pretty different once you get the Roc's Feather and then you can jump, and that's really cool, but otherwise, exploring the world, figuring out where your next destination is, going off the beaten path for some heart pieces or other items. It's pretty standard stuff. My only main issue here is that sometimes the path to progression is a bit too obscure. Like, the game does do a decent job pointing you in the right direction, but I would be lying if I said I didn't have to pull up a guide once or twice for some really true proper guidance. But maybe I'm just an idiot. I don't know. I sometimes keep forgetting that Ulrira is right there, ready to direct me whenever you run into a phone booth. He's always ready to go, and I forget to use him. Also, did you know that Ulrira's house is actually shaped like a phone? Yo, that's crazy. You know what? I take it back. The worst thing about this game is easily the stupid acorns. Like, you get one of these things and it gives you an attack bonus until you take enough damage and then it goes away, and that's all fine and good, more attack. But they show up so often, and whenever you touch one, it plays this stupid jingle the entire time, overlapping the rest of the game's great music. In terms of general quality of life though, there are things that the Switch version definitely handles better. The sword, shield, and dash abilities are all permanently active, making item management so much easier since it's less time pausing the game over and over again to change things out. Overworld exploration is no longer consistently having single screens that scroll by. It really helps with the game's flow. And the map is a lot easier to decipher specific landmarks. I like that a whole lot because, once again, I'm an idiot. There are some performance issues here and there, which is very strange, but even still, the Switch version, in my opinion, is the way to go here. But it is still nice to go back and appreciate what they managed to accomplish on the Game Boy. Something that is lost and definitely missed in the Switch version is the photo quest, where you can do certain things and go to specific places to activate these cute little photo opportunities that you can print out with the Game Boy printer, because oh man, that thing actually exists. Instead, in the remake, we got a dungeon maker, which... Yeah, it's kind of lame, to be honest. But regardless, whether on Game Boy Color or Switch, Link's Awakening is a great and unforgettable Legend of Zelda adventure, just without the Zelda part. And it is a great beginning for what is to come in the future. Just don't even bother with the original Game Boy version. Like, yeah, it's neat, it's fine. Seeing the game with only 4 colors, ooh, it's so cool. But the DX version is objectively better and features a whole new dungeon based on color. Let's not pretend like the original version is still worth it, okay? Still good, but come on now. Despite how different Link's Awakening was at the time of release, it's really what's to come after that is far more compelling in my opinion, because while that original game was made in-house at Nintendo, that's really cool, the next 3 games were developed by Capcom. I know we've all come to accept that, but still a very weird thing. The Oracle of Ages and the Oracle of Seasons. Many people discuss these games as if they're simply 2 halves of a single adventure, and honestly, that always does these games a really big disservice. Like, whenever people would rank Zelda games, they would put these 2 in the same spot, like, no? What are you doing? Sure, Nintendo did go for the same 2-version simultaneous release idea that Pokemon did, which was 2 versions of the same game, but the beauty of the Oracle games is that they are 2 completely independent adventures, each with a different main focus, Ages being puzzles and Seasons being combat. The kicker is, they do just so happen to have a really cool gimmick where you get a specific code after beating whichever game you play first that you can input at the start of the second adventure that will not only include a big final boss and extra ending, but also throw in a bunch of characters that reference your first adventure, and will even provide additional codes to swap between games to unlock items in both games. This is wild, man. This is like some stop and swap from Banjo-Kazooie like tech, but actually in a final product. For this playthrough, I started with Ages first. It's higher up in the alphabet. I figured, why not? That's good enough of a reason. In this story, Link has been transported by the power of the Triforce to the world of Labrynna. And before long, it turns out that Impa, who had helped bring you to the Oracle of Ages, Nehru, was taken over by the evil Verin. And once thrown aside, Nehru is taken away for, no doubt, nefarious purposes. And once again, no Zelda here. That's kind of cool. We're really committing to this. And then, yeah, you go on a quest to save Nehru. Makes sense. One thing that's noticeable right off the bat is that this world feels a lot more populated with a wider range of people. Certainly not as wacky or out there as Link's Awakening was, but still, just within the first hour you get to explore the mines with people hard at work. You get help from this giant sentient tree that has a crush on you. That's weird, but okay. There's this baby that you can name early on in the adventure and watch it grow up over time. I named mine Blimp, by the way. Look at him. He's adorable. He has my eyes. And then later on, look at that. The Gorons are here. Love those guys. Oh, Ralph is here too. And he rocks a diagonal belt buckle. Dude is crazy. Now contrast this with Seasons, which has almost the same exact setup. Due to the power of the Triforce, Link gets transported to a new land, this time Holodrum, and after a little bit of exploring, you run into Impa and the Oracle of, this time Seasons, Din. And then you're partying, you're having a good time, but hey, the sky goes dark and a tornado steals the Oracle away, and they are now held captive by the evil Onyx. And then, yeah, you go on a quest to save Din this time. The world may be different, but a lot of the same perks still apply. Plenty of new characters like these cute little guys in the lava world of Subrosia. There's another big sentient tree to guide you, this time one that doesn't have a massive crush on you. At least, I think so. And since I played Ages first, I got to see Adult Blimp right from the very start. Look at him. I'm so proud of him, they grow up so fast. Only downside, no Ralph. No Ralph in sight. Spoilers, I like Ages a lot more than Seasons for multiple reasons, and this is primarily one of the reasons why. That diagonal belt, it goes really hard. But don't get it twisted, the premises of these adventures are definitely very similar, but the adventures as a whole, they totally stand out on their own. Coming from Link's Awakening, they are very much cut from the same cloth, we're built on top of the same engine after all, so things like customizing what both face buttons do, that's still here. But also progression between dungeons remains largely the same as well. It is still a classic Zelda game after all. But this time, there's rideable mounts! 3 of them! Dude, at 3 different points in both games, there are 3 animals that you can help out. The Dodongo Dimitri, the Flying Bear Moosh, and the Punching Kangaroo Ricky. And after you help them, you get to pick one to use at your command whenever you want. And there are multiple sections of these worlds that require each of their abilities. It is so awesome. The only downside is, yeah, you only get to pick one, and then once you do, you can't call the other 2. That's kind of a shame. I think it was to emphasize playing this game multiple times, but I'm not gonna do that, and it's okay. It's not like there's a better choice than Ricky anyway. Both games also share a very similar overworld gimmick, where you can transport yourself to a different form of the land that you're on when standing on specific pedestals and playing an instrument. In Ages, you swap back and forth between past and present, and in Seasons, you swap between spring, summer, fall, and winter. And this is the primary source of interesting design for both Labrynna and Holodrum. Learning which of the time periods or seasons is the key to progression. And even though we only got 2 options in Ages and 4 in Seasons, the level of complexity is actually pretty identical. Labrynna, being time-based, allows for puzzles that are a little bit more nuanced. You get to do things like talking to Goron ancestors to influence how their offspring will act in the present. While Holodrum, being season-based, allows for puzzles that are a little bit more simplistic, like water being frozen when it's turned into winter, and special flowers that are growing when it's turned into spring. The seasonal changes lead to more visually distinct aesthetics, while personally speaking, the time period changes lead to deeper and more interesting character interactions. Both are good, they both have pros and cons, and they're both good at the thing that the other game isn't. They do complement each other really well. Yo, at some point in Ages, there's this one island where these little lizard people steal all of your gear and you have to go get it back. This is prototype Eventide Island from Breath of the Wild, and I will not be told differently. And the dungeons are also a major standout. As I mentioned before, Ages is based on puzzles and Seasons is based on combat. And before playing these games for the first time, I didn't really understand what that meant, but quite frankly, it really doesn't get much deeper than that. The dungeons in Ages have many more instances of figuring out how the items that you get within are used to flip switches and open doors and whatnot, the typical thing you would expect, but just a whole lot more of it. While the dungeons in Seasons have many more rooms that are all about just throwing a bunch of enemies at you and defeating them is what will open the door. Ages has the switch hook item that lets you swap places with certain blocks to pass over holes and ledges and whatnot, and Seasons has the magnetic gloves to push and pull you away from different magnetic poles. Obviously, Ages still has combat and Seasons still has puzzles, so while these differences are apparent, like these games as a whole, they all still feel like proper fleshed out dungeons, and it all comes down to which style you prefer. And yes, to me, I think the Ages dungeons are some of the best in portable Zelda history. The dungeons and Seasons are fine. I could see if you really like the style of the combat in these games, then you would definitely prefer Seasons over Ages. Totally makes sense, but yeah, for me, puzzles all the way. If anything though, the most interesting thing about the dungeons and Seasons is that some of them are almost straight up recreations of the maps from Zelda 1 on NES. And even a heavy majority of the bosses are also from Zelda 1, with some also being from Link to the Past. It's a ton of references, and I'm a big fan. It's funny, the story goes there was supposed to be a 3rd Oracle game to release alongside the 2 that actually did release, which would feature Furore as the Oracle, and it was essentially supposed to be a full remake of the game that started it all. But considering Seasons already has so much of that game's core DNA, I wonder what that that game would have been like if a third Oracle game did release, and what that adventure would even provide at all that would set itself apart from the other two. But I'm sure Nintendo realized that trying to link 3 separate games together would lead to headaches for gamers in every generation until the end of time, so it was likely scrapped for good reason. Apparently, during development, what was initially proposed was a whopping 6 Zelda games for the Game Boy Color, each of them releasing like 4 or 5 months apart, and yeah, you know what, I'm really happy that didn't happen. A lot of conversation gets muddied with the Oracles duo due to how the two games relate to each other, and honestly, I really don't think I helped matters here, but hey, the bottom line is I think more people simply know what these games' gimmicks are all about than actually having played them. In my opinion, it does not matter which of these two you start off with, they are both incredibly well done standalone adventures with a pretty unbeatable feeling during the second game talking about your first quest. That is so damn cool. And hey, if you do go the distance, you even get to appreciate Zelda and Ganon showing up too. Yes, Zelda is actually here, but only after linking the games together. That is quite the reward. For me, it's no contest. The 2 Oracle games are the most underappreciated titles in this series. And dude, Capcom made these? What's interesting is while Capcom is the logo at the game's boot up, it's important to know that these games are actually worked on by a subsidiary of Capcom at the time, Flagship, a team that does have a few other titles under their belt for sure, but most notably, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror and Kirby Squeak Squad. It's just kind of funny. Actually, you see in Kirby Squeak Squad, one of the copy abilities that was introduced is Animal, where the main gimmick are your claws that you can not only use to slash enemies, but also dig tile by tile in huge piles of dirt. Oh hey, look at that! The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, the third and final Zelda game developed by Flagship, and this time for the Game Boy Advance. Dude, this game is so good. Releasing years after the Link to the Past GBA port, further finalizing the idea that this system was basically just a handheld Super Nintendo, here comes the Minish Cap, an entirely brand new adventure that plays similar to A Link to the Past, but with a sweet shrinking down mechanic that really feels like we're approaching top-down Zelda perfection here. It's been 100 years since the tiny Picori descended from the skies to assist in ridding the evil spirits from the land of Hyrule by providing the Picori blade to a hero wearing green. And this year we had a sword fighting tournament, which was won by the mysterious Vati, who... I mean, yeah, he's evil. Like, you can't have a name like Vati and not have bad intentions. Like, you were born for this, dude. Vati shatters the Picori blade and opens up the bound chest, which had been sealed by the Picori blade, unleashing evil monsters across the land, and turns Princess Zelda to stone just for good measure. Yeah, now it's time to go on a quest to save Zelda. You knew this was coming. But this time with a talking hat. It's the one thing this franchise had been missing up until this point, and I hope in an alternate universe, Ezlo and Cappy are friends. This is also yet another one of those games where Ganondorf doesn't make a single appearance. I'm really loving this move to create new villains that try to stand out on their own instead of just ultimately being a servant to Ganon. Like, I really like this whole thing a lot. Like, yeah, the Oracles did have Ganon in the ultimate ending, but that's mostly Twin Rova's doing, and like the boss fight is pretty easy, like a 2-minute thing. He's an afterthought as far as I'm concerned. And hell, even in Link's Awakening with the final boss being this like weird shadow nightmare vision of maybe Ganon, leaves a much better impact anyway given that game's dreamlike narrative. Sorry, am I getting sidetracked? You see, Ezlo is a Minish, and he was actually Vati's mentor at one point, but after he was given a magical cap that allows the wearer to grant wishes, Vati used it to become a powerful sorcerer, turning Ezlo into a cap in the process. It does sound pretty grim, but Ezlo has one magic trick up his sleeve. He's a hat, he doesn't have sleeves. If you jump onto specific pedestals, you can now shrink down in size. And this is it. This is the core concept that Minish Cap is all about. And damn, it is such a strong one at that. The general traversal of the world is as typical top-down Zelda as you can get, but it is so damn cool shrinking down in size so you can walk these tiny hallways avoiding giant sticks under giant leaves, being able to float and push yourself along on these lily pads. And dude, the first boss is a stupid choo-choo, but big. This is incredible. We got big Yoshi's Island energy here, and I'm a big fan. Of all of the Link gets to travel to an alternate version of the main world idea in this entire franchise, I gotta say, turning small is easily my favorite. Maybe it's just because I've always loved when games have you feeling really tiny, like big Chippendale Rescue Rangers for the NES vibes here too. Love that game. But like, when you're tiny here, you get to talk to animals. And that's just rad, okay? But really, when you boil it down, this is simply a super polished old school Zelda experience, almost like a spiritual successor to Link to the Past, over 10 years in the making. Many of the items are familiar, but then you also get the gust jar to shoot out puffs of wind, the cane of Packy that lets you flip different items, as well as create these high jump portals out of these little holes in the ground. Yo, the Four Sword is here and it lets Link duplicate himself. That's really cool. These new items are sick. Dude, and the dungeon designs are superb here too. Big shout out to the Palace of Winds. Dare I say, one of my favorite dungeons in this entire franchise. The music is great, the general aesthetic is great, and there's an absolutely epic boss in the sky. I love this so much. Hey, look at that, all the oracles are here too, look at them. Hell yeah, man. And plus, when you really look at this whole thing big picture, like, it's a game about becoming small and it was released on a system meant to be thrown in your pocket. That's just cute. That being said though, the world does feel relatively small too. You check the map here, it's like, there really aren't that many areas to explore. This Hyrule is fairly fun-sized. But because the playstyle is so much fun, and these areas are so densely packed when you consider the places you can get to just by shrinking down, this is far from a problem. If anything, the main complaints go down to items like the Kinstones, but honestly, I kinda like these too. There are these characters all across the land that have at least one half of a kinstone and they request the other. There's a handful of different colors, a bunch of different shapes, there are a ton of combinations, and you find kinstone pieces in a ton of different places and ways too. It can get a bit grindy, but in my opinion, it is fairly inoffensive. It's kinda like that part in Skyward Sword where you would slash these blocks with a Skyward Strike and then something would happen in the sky. Like, something about this dynamic I'm really a fan of. Now on the other hand, grinding out the stupid gacha machine for over 100 stupid figures just to get one stupid piece of heart, yeah, that's trash. As good as this game is, one of the series' best, no doubt, don't complete it. Just enjoy the ride at your own pace, and then call it quits when the credits roll. It is not worth the literal heartache here. You may have morbid curiosity and think, oh, it can't be that bad. No, just please don't do it. Simply don't go for 100% completion, and Minish Cap will remain one of the best adventures Link has ever gone on. Chibi-Robo is one of the more confusing series Nintendo's come up with. They made a handful of games, they garnered quite a decent-sized fan base, and it's like they never cared. Chibi-Robo Plug into Adventure is one of those games that you know about because you never played it, but you swear one of these days you'll get around to it. Now, I think the series is mostly known for giving us Ziplash, and boy, that's a sin that shouldn't go unpunished. But before that game apparently ruined the chances of Chibi-Robo ever being a thing again, this was actually a multi-game franchise across multiple consoles, and the character was easily the most popular thing the developers at Skip Limited ever came up with. Not really much competition when the rest of their library consists of a ton of art style games, some Japanese-only titles, Captain Rainbow will one day rise again, and of course publishing LOL on the DS in Japan, but come on, everybody knows that. Sheer curiosity has brought me to this point. As a massive Nintendo fanboy, I had to see what all the fuss was about. But the question here isn't whether or not this game is good, but why a game like Ziplash, or why the lack of major notoriety like being an assist trophy in Smash Bros. Has driven the self-proclaimed hardcore Chibi-Robo fanbase crazy. This is my first time ever checking this game out actually, I'm really excited. Let's see what I've been missing out on. In Chibi-Robo you play as, well, Chibi-Robo, a toy robot that Mr. Sanderson gave his daughter Jenny for her 8th birthday. The family is currently dealing with a bunch of problems. The father is out of a job, the mother is mad at him for constantly spending money on toys despite not having a job, and Jenny thinks she's a frog. Something I think we can all relate to? The goal of the Chibi-Robo toy line is actually to bring happiness to those around it, so hey, in dire times, anything is worth a shot. And joining you on your journey is a flying television, Television, who yells oh a lot and constantly asks us to not mind him. But then the night comes, and like Toy Story, when the humans are away and asleep, the toys run rampant, and throughout the game we end up working to make all of them happy as well. The dog toy, Sophie, is struggling to express her love to space hunter Drake Redcrest. The Free Rangers army is enlisting soldiers for a battle against the family dog Tao after it kidnapped one of the soldiers and injured the sergeant's eye. Captain Plankbeard wants to sail on the waters once again, and he asks you to help make his dreams possible. The house is filled with all these wacky and out there characters, and the thing is, most of them are optional. Whether or not you eventually meet any of these toys is a matter of being in the right place at the right time by going off the beaten path. It wasn't until I saved this creepy looking flower after being requested to do so by this Lego dinosaur and then it started dancing that I realized, what? Honestly, even when I started actually playing the game, I had no idea what I was doing. You're running around a large room, most of which is inaccessible to you. This battery number is slowly going down. You soon pick up a toothbrush, which you can use to clean up dirty spots for some reason. I'm kinda just doing things aimlessly. Well, since that number is in fact your battery level, you gotta remember to plug in every so often for a charge, otherwise you die. You run faster when you're holding your plug, so I definitely recommend doing that when you can. Doing so also allows you to go inside these special chibi doors. Ooh, I wonder what's inside. Okay, scary eyes, don't hurt me. I'm just gonna take this money and go now. Thanks, bye. The first hour or so of the game was simply me not knowing what I was doing, coming up with way more questions than I was receiving answers. I introduced myself to Drake Redcrest, and now I can dress up as him. Why? I can pick up trash and throw it in my head. Why? Ah. He sit. Going into this totally blind, it took me quite a while to realize that, oh, this is actually just like an old school adventure game. By running around and talking to different characters, it's all a matter of getting and using items in specific contexts in order to succeed in making them happy and gaining more happy points as well as money, which is required to upgrade your stamina and utilities to explore even more of the house and meet more of the toys. The main objective is to make the Sanderson family happy, while subsequently discovering some of the house's secrets to do so. Some of the side characters you run into as part of the story, some you don't, and whether or not you go out of your way to help them is entirely up to you. The family is the only primary focus. But alongside that, on your first trip to the basement, you discover a deactivated Giga-Robo, a helper robot that used to have a strong relationship with all of the other toys. So your other main goal is to revitalize this big boy. Oh, and also there are aliens. Of course there are. Sometimes when you go to get your plug back from a charge, a pan falls out of the sky and knocks you out for a second. You continue playing after that. This doesn't hurt you in any way, it's just something that may or may not happen. Cool? Everything said thus far is just saying what you do, but believe it or not, there is a game behind all of this, and explaining how to do those things, that's a whole lot easier to do. The Sandersons' two-story house is free to explore. This is an open world here, provided you have the tools to do so. The size may not seem all that impressive on the surface, but there are so many nooks and crannies and demon doors everywhere that really makes this feel like a fully lived-in world. Everybody found within is so damn wacky, and Chibi's dead stare makes everything you do super charming. Whenever a question is asked of you, a simple pop-up happens whether you want to say yes or no, even if the question doesn't deserve a yes or no answer. I don't know why that's funny, maybe I'm just easy to please. The battery mechanic can be a bit annoying to get used to, but you upgrade that pretty quickly, so it's nothing a little bit of time management can't solve. On that same note, there is also a daily time limit, Pikmin style. And this, truthfully, I'm less fond of. You actually end up having a choice as to whether a day or night cycle goes for 5, 10, or 15 minutes. Well, it turns out that some quests only progress at a certain time of day. The next chapter takes place at night, it only now just turned day, so you're stuck with 15 minutes to wander and figure out what to do, then you do the thing that you need to when night comes, only to find out that the following step happens during the day. So hey, back to waiting. I get it though, by giving you this much free time, you are really encouraged to run around and explore. Chances are, you'll find something new. But if you're laser focused on a specific goal like, well, a person, then expect to just sit there for a good amount of time, just waiting. Did I mention there's aliens? This doesn't ruin the game by any stretch, but it can definitely feel like a massive roadblock at times. Sometimes you'll be in the middle of doing something important, but the moon says it's time to go home, and you're a good little robot, so you have to follow the rules. To be fair though, I think I would care more if the other characters that you interact with didn't exist, because oh man, not only are they great on a personality level, this is where you find a bulk of the gameplay variety as well. Plenty of training missions with the Free Rangers, playing a game of chicken in a toy car, shooting targets in a plane. Sometimes the camera and controls can be a bit finicky, but it's more than manageable in my opinion. There's also like this evil horde of robotic spiders called Spy Doors. Oh man, that practically come out of nowhere, start infiltrating the house, and then when you're running around, they'll just pop up, ready for battle. And thanks to a blaster that you can purchase, you can go into battle against them. Suddenly, this is a run and gun game. Okay. Oh hey, look at that, a side scroller. Maybe Ziplash isn't so unfaithful after all. And now everybody's mad at me. But even with those occasional roadblocks, this is still a generally slow-paced game. Soak in the world, everybody. You have no other options. For my money, I'm totally cool with that. The text, on the other hand, can sometimes go at a snail's pace, and that's annoying. I got no bright side to that one. But yeah, overall, game's great. I get it now. I see what people have been talking about all this time. On a gameplay front, it's definitely slightly confusing trying to get into, and I would be lying if I said I didn't have to consult a guide to figure out just what the hell to do to continue sometimes. But the expansive world, charming characters, varied gameplay scenarios, it makes for something really unique and special. Every time you think you know what's gonna happen, why did that happen? I have no idea, and I'm totally okay with that. The GameCube is home to some of Nintendo's most unique ideas, and I can easily say that Chibi-Robo is the brightest example of a new IP on that console. When you really take a look back at that generation, Nintendo was quite the risk taker. They gave this random developer a shot on their console, and we got a really good game out of it. And did it pay off well for them? Of course not, you already know the answer to that. A sequel that was exclusive to Walmart, another that never left Japan, a random eShop tech demo more or less, and everybody's favorite, Ziplash. This poor little robot never stood a chance. Even when GameCube games were getting ported over to the Wii courtesy of the new Play Control line, Chibi-Robo was mysteriously the only one that didn't get localized, which is so upsetting. Just one look at a trailer shows this would have been great. Widescreen support, basic motion controls, would have been really fun. If any series deserves a proper second chance, it's this one. Hey, even if we get an HD remaster of the original game, I would be totally okay with that. Streamline the time of day system, let me skip through the text, and make it easier to keep track of all the available side quests. Just implement a bunch of quality of life improvements, and then actually give it a spotlight instead of just releasing it out of nowhere, and I don't know, man. I think it would work. It's just a shame that Nintendo probably doesn't feel the same way. Super Smash Bros. Brawl is a fantastic source of quality Nintendo fan service. So you know where I'm going with this, and I want to thank you for doing your homework. Deep within the menus upon menus of Brawl's UI, inside of the massive vault, is the Nintendo Chronicle, a list of every game Nintendo has ever published, as of December 2007, of course. It's such a fascinating look at all of the things Nintendo was willing to put their money into, man. You see, people thought that Sora in Smash was such a big deal, but the true historians know that Game & Watch Mickey Mouse is truly what paved the way for this partnership to take place. Don't fool yourself otherwise. You got Popeye on NES, multiple baseball games featuring Ken Griffey Jr., so much so you would practically think he was a Nintendo character. He was on an official Christmas card for crying out loud. The Virtual Boy. But at the bottom of the Game Boy line is where one of my favorite nuggets of Nintendo trivia resides. Hamtaro. In fact, jump over to the GBA and hey, look at that! More Hamtaro. I have just never gotten over this information, man. I get it, you know, licensed properties, they make a lot of money, sure. Nowadays we have the Switch, Nintendo has worked with both Marvel and DC, they clearly don't care. But Hamtaro? Alright, so here's a bit of a history lesson for all of you uncultured viewers out there who don't know about the almighty Hamtaro. The anime is by far one of the cutest damn things you could ever bear witness to. Across multiple seasons and even some movies, Hamtaro and his ragtag group of fellow adorable and quirky hamsters would go on adventures and yeah, you know, that was really about it. That was the whole show. And it was awesome. I discovered this show around that time I was first getting into anime too, with the likes of Dragon Ball Z and whatnot, and then to see Tom from Toonami talk about how good Hamtaro was, man, I was a fan ever since. Just be sure to not get this confused with Ebichu, which is a totally different hamster anime. I'll say that much without getting demonetized. Hamtaro did exist before the anime, but in a very small capacity. There was some early animation where Hamtaro wore a shirt, and that's weird. He's much better when he's naked. And even before that, there was this educational magazine for Japanese school children where Hamtaro would, like, stare your soul into submission, I guess. It's clear that the anime is when things started to peak. Dude, even the theme song was so good. Good enough to have the lyrics altered by protesters in Bangkok against the government of Thailand. Oh, man. I did not expect to see that on the series Wikipedia page, I can say that much. Hams unite to take down the government, I guess. So yeah, this became a pretty notable franchise. Of course, with success on their hands, video games were soon to follow. Yeah, there is a mobile game, there's also an old PC game as well, but I just can't believe that Nintendo would publish most of them. Dude, some are even made by Alpha Dream. What is this company? This may come off as me scraping the bottom of the barrel of Nintendo content to talk about for you guys on the internet, but trust me, there's a whole lot more to this than you could ever possibly imagine. I have played every game in this franchise, and I'm here to tell you, we got some fun times ahead. So, without any further ado, it's Hamtaro time. Hushy hushy, ticky ticky woo. Some of you may be expecting me to start with the Game Boy Color classic Ham Hams Unite, but actually that's not the first game in the series. In Japan, that game has a nice big 2 attached to it, which begs the question, why was the first game, Totoko Hamtaro Tomodachi Daisuken Dechu, never get localized? Because it's a hamster simulator. That's why. Obviously, there's a big language barrier to work around here, though I can tell the game asks me for my blood type along with all my other information, so, you know, I always thought that little nugget was missing from the Pokemon games. I tried so hard to figure out if there was actually a game here, but I don't know, man. I couldn't find it. I don't know what to say to that one. Definitely didn't think I was gonna see Hamtaro jump today. I'm really not sure why this is the case, but it turns out Hamster Simulator is actually a full-on genre, mostly in Japan. You got the Hamster Paradise series, there's Kisuke Hamster, Hamster Monogatari is another series, with one of them even showing up on the N64. I guess in Japan, Hamtaro with this genre made total sense. It does in retrospect, but like, why are there so many hamster games? It's no surprise this one didn't get localized. We already got our deformed pets games. We were totally fine at the time. But now we move on to the good stuff. Ham Hams Unite, developed by Pax Sofnica, a company that I'm pretty sure no one's heard of, but trust me on this, they also worked on Mole Mania. This is a good group of developers right here. I'm really glad Nintendo had a go-to developer for their furry rodent-themed video games. Worked out great for them. It's kind of strange that this one is considered a sequel in Japan. I mean, Hamtaro's in it, sure, but this is a totally different beast. I mean, look at him. What a beast he is. Looks like we have a conundrum on our hands. Hamtaro doesn't know ham chat. Unbelievable. On top of that, all of your friends have gone missing too. Well, since Boss can't be bothered to go and hunt for anyone himself, leave it to our hero to fill out the dictionary and repopulate the hamster hideout himself. From there, you kinda just wander around a bunch. You pick up food, talk to locals, gather items for those who need them, occasionally dabble in blackmail, and fill up your ham chat book. And really, that's the best part of the game. Each word is associated with this adorable little gesture, and like, oh my god, this game is so cute. That is the main takeaway to get out of this. It's just, oh man, oh look at him do the thing. Oh, that's adorable. We kind of work with an old school point and click mentality with this actually. Whenever you come in contact with anything, just try every option available to you and hope it's the right one. Eventually you'll get it right. Sometimes it leads to progression, sometimes it's just another cute animation, sometimes you almost die. It's a lot of fun. Ooh, a cave, what's in here? Shush, we'll get caught. Think I just stumbled across a crime scene. Alright, how do we get the scarf from this bird? What do you mean peeing didn't work? Damn it. Much love to this salesman too, by the way. He just begs you to buy whatever he's trying to peddle at the moment and does so with this really catchy song playing in the background. I love it. It's my favorite part of the game. Okay, wait, no, I lied. My actual favorite part of the game has to be pretty late into the adventure, where you basically kill a man, he screams for his life on the way down, and Hamtaro goes, oh yeah, you know, let's put that scream in the dictionary. Oh my god. You see, that's the thing with these games now. They are oddly compelling. You may think it's just a kid's game, you give it to little Jimmy or Sarah, it'll shut them up for a while, but no, not at all. Hamtaro has a body count now. Bringing all of your ham friends back to the hideout is only part of the journey. You do so, get to see a sick party take place, but the adventure truly isn't over until you fill up that dictionary. It isn't until you hit boss with that ham-tast when you're all filled up, and then he gives you the final word, Great Chew. The book cover changes. Oh, and that's it now. Ah, damn, you know what? That's pretty anticlimactic, I'm not gonna lie. Where's my gripping narrative, game? Well, considering how all over the place the Game Boy Color exclusive lineup was, I guess, by default, that makes this one of the best Nintendo exclusives on the console, so, hey, congrats are in order, my Ham friend. Good job. Maybe the sequel is even better. Ham Heartbreak for the Game Boy Advance. Enter player name, huh? Bijou is playable in this one too. Interesting. I am original and funny. Clearly I didn't watch enough of the anime because, my god, Hamtaro has a villain? This is Spat, a character that apparently only showed up in 3 episodes of the show and was strong enough of a character to become the focal point of a video game. Good for him. Ooh, and what a villain he is. Essentially, he just randomly goes about his day, finding happy people, and doing whatever he can to ruin love for them. Basically a standard Twitter user, the more I think about it. Well, naturally, we can't have that. Come on, Sonic. Come on, Sonic. You have to save the day. Oh no, we got the dictionary wet. Losing all of the information inside in the process? Somehow? Well, I guess we've forgotten all the words now and have to go get them all over again. It's like a Metroid game all of a sudden when Samus would lose all of her powers randomly. The game certainly looks a whole lot better now that it's on better hardware, but essentially, it is basically the same idea. Pick up food, talk to the locals, gather items for those who need them, partake in high-speed action scenes and make Hamtaro scared for his life, and then fill up your ham chat book. You know, same game. It's just that rather than being solo, Bijou joins you for most of the ride, and rather than bringing your friends back to the hideout, you mend broken hearts of anybody that stands in your way. This does include your friends, but basically anybody could be hit by Spat's evil ways. You're not so much of a matchmaker as you are a match repairer, and you know, that's still a pretty respectable job. Playing both of these games back to back and needing to fill out the dictionary with all of these words that you already had before is a bit annoying, but there is a whole slew of new words with much more fleshed out animations too. This game is still cute as ham heck. Let's not kid our ham selves here. This game is mother hamming adorable. Big fan of Liberty, where they just randomly pull out a Statue of Liberty cosplay. Amazing. They look fabulous. There's Bloat Tea, which introduces inflation to the franchise. Good. And Rub. You're free to insinuate anything you want about this in the comments below. It's not all the same game though, there is definitely a lot more done here to spice things up from time to time. Many of the tasks that you have to accomplish are more dynamic than before, when they were just mostly static. There's a volleyball segment, a dancing minigame where you plan out your entire routine to get graded on. There's like a genuine boss fight, like, what? The environments are a bit all over the place as well. Ham Hams Unite tried to stay a lot more grounded and realistic with its locations, but here in Heartbreak, we have a theme park with the hamster roller coaster, and I mean that alone is way out of the boundaries of what we had before. There is more of the same, but it's a lot more polished. There is no denying that. There were some moments that were pretty aimless where I needed a random word that I just happened to miss because I didn't talk to every single NPC in the previous area. That kind of sucked, but in general, it's still a good time. Dude, okay, spoilers, I guess, but when you get to the end of the game and need help building a catapult to get to Spat's evil lair, you need to get a special spoon to do so. Only obtainable after getting 3 special gems, something pretty easy to come across, and then... Oh, Ganon's not gonna see this coming, I tell you what. And by far, my favorite part of the game, it's technically not even a part of the game, it's stuff that was taken out, but the code is still there, and this is amazing. Partway into the game, there's this segment where our heroes go on a boat trip to a different area, and in the final product, the game just cuts from one area to the next after getting onto the boat, and it's fine, you don't really think much about it. Well, initially, there was going to be a cutscene referencing one of the iconic moments from the Titanic. This is real, and there was going to be a rendition of My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion playing in the background. This is a real thing that almost happened. Okay, so I'm not gonna pretend to be like a Titanic expert or anything like that, but I think this implies that Hamtaro dies. Ham Heartbreak really has no right to be as enjoyable as it is. I'm starting to understand why Nintendo put so much money into this franchise. Ham Hams Unite was a nice, charming, fun adventure, And this is just way better. It can only go up from here, I guess. Things are about to get even crazier. Next up, the, sort of the end of the Hamtaro adventure game trilogy. Here we have Rainbow Rescue, releasing in Japan, Europe, and not America for some reason. Not sure why that happened. But the craziest part of all, this was developed by Alpha Dream, the team that brought us Mario and Luigi and Tomato Adventure. Yes, Hamtaro Rainbow Rescue is also their baby. Okay, well, I guess it was time for someone new to give these hamsters a shot. I can't believe it. Oh no, you guys, it looks like the Rainbow Prince bow has fallen. That's not good. Apparently, this being is able to make rainbows with his umbrella. That's pretty cool, but it's lost its power after losing its colors. Oh darn. Well, alright, simple enough I guess. Go with your friends and scavenge the land for items that have the core colors that you need and save the day. But you know, first things first here, we gotta partake in a little bit of coloring. You're gonna give me a coloring book as soon as the game starts. Of course I'm gonna take advantage of it. There you go. Sonic the Hamster. My fan character is real now. One thing that is immediately apparent with this game, the sprite work has gotten a massive upgrade. Heartbreak was just a bit of a polished version of Unite, which was fine, but wow, you get a little bit of extra budget in there and rework all the sprites, it looks so good. Especially those character portraits, man, great looking stuff all around. The shading is immaculate, or dare I say, Hamaculate, I guess. Rainbow Rescue actually released a few months before Superstar Saga did, and it is very evident in both that art direction is one of this team's strong suits. Alpha Dream really knew how to get those pixels to look really nice. On the surface, it may seem like this is more of the same once again, except now you control a whole slew of hamsters at the same time instead of just one or two, but no, actually the entire gameplay loop has been completely modified, and I think for the better. There's still plenty of locals to talk to and ham-has to throw around at your leisure, but now mini-games take center stage in almost everything you do. The world is filled with tasks to complete, simple little mini-games that get you from one place to another, secure an item that you need, stuff like that. And rather than being restricted from progression because of a word that you just simply couldn't think of, sometimes you need a specific hamster for a task that you haven't recruited yet, and then there you go. You get the one that you need, since not everybody can do everything this time around, and you move on with your day. Considering Superstar Saga's main gimmick was partnering brother with brother like at all times, it's pretty wild to think that this game works with a similar concept. I mean, it makes sense, they were both being developed around the same time, but the parallels. I didn't think I'd be comparing Mario to Hamtaro, but here we are. Also, since dialogue and the actions happen a lot quicker, and we have a much more standard form of progression now with story segments revolving around a specific color and then you move on, the pace has quickened up dramatically from what it used to be. That aura of sort of being lost and kind of just wandering around aimlessly until you talk to the right person with the right word, that's no longer here. Thank goodness. Plus, the whole minigames needing specific hamsters thing adds a whole lot of personality to these characters that mostly just relied on text in the previous games. There is a lot of genuine thought put into this. Now ultimately, all jokes aside, this is still a kid's game, and me, the grown adult, playing a game that's way out of his target demographic may not have the best judgment call here, but these games are pretty good. I mean, there's no committing crimes, there's no narrowly avoiding death, there's no narrowly causing death, but it's still pretty good. There may be some of those weird twisted things at the end of the rainbow that I haven't seen yet, but even without that, it's still enjoyable, I guess. You see, that's one of the problems when you have a genuinely solid game to talk about. There's less interesting things to say. I mean, good for the game, I guess. Alpha Dream did the impossible here and hit the ground running with Hamtaro. That's so cool. But if you're looking for more of that blackmail and aura of death stuff that the previous adventures gave you, that's not gonna be here. Hopefully your thoughts on the game don't hinge on that fact. But now, for all intents and purposes, this is the end of the sort of, I don't know, like it's a Hamtaro trilogy, I guess. We have 3 games of a similar gameplay style where each game has very noticeable upgrades as we move forward, while each staying very enjoyable in their own right. These are pretty good, I gotta say. These are actually really fun. Alpha Dream would go on to make a few other games for the franchise, but none of them really hit the high marks of before. Next on the docket, we have Hamtaro, the Ham Games. As you can probably figure just based on the artwork, we got a sports-themed minigame collection here. Interestingly enough, this game was released in between Rainbow Rescue's Japanese release and its European release nearly a year and a half later. Why the long delay, you might ask? Well, that's because of Nintendo. Didn't really matter to Japan, I guess, but Nintendo of Europe specifically wanted Ham Ham Games' release to coincide with the 2004 Summer Olympics in Athens, Greece. Because of course. Oh man, the world is funny sometimes. We got racing, tennis, diving, hammer throw. This is indeed an Olympics-based video game, alright. I have played far too much Mario and Sonic in my life to know exactly what to get out of this. All of the sprite work continues to be great, and for what it is, it plays fine, but I think I'm mostly just upset that the era of Hamtaro adventure games is dead now. This is a fine enough minigame collection, but I didn't want this. I was able to change the main hamster greeting though from ham ha to "Suh, dude." So I mean, that's something. And then we can jump to the DS and, well, unfortunately things don't really get any better. There's a quiz game that didn't release outside of Japan, so that's a total bust. And then there's a game that did get localized. Hi Hamtaro, Ham Ham Challenge. It's another minigame collection, but catered for a much tinier child demographic. It's pretty brain dead, honestly. The previous minigame collections were like kind of Mario Party themed. They were easy, but you still had to put some thought into it. Here, nah, these are for children still trying to develop their basic motor skills. Sadly, before we knew it, Hamtaro had entered licensed game purgatory before fading out into relative obscurity. Alpha Dream should not have messed with the good thing, man. Maybe they wouldn't be bankrupt right now if that was the case. Okay, maybe that one was mean. It's crazy, man. I knew for years that Nintendo published these games, and it was always this neat little nugget of trivia that I had in the back of my head, but when you really look at everything this series had to offer, this was one hell of a rabbit hole. Or hamster hole, I guess. The Mario and Luigi developers were involved. One of the games was tied to the Olympics. There's the Cut Titanic scene. That is fantastic stuff. At the end of the day, what I'm calling the Hamtaro Adventure Trilogy offered plenty of entertainment for the hours I put into it. The other games, not as good, but it made that Adventure Trilogy all that sweeter. So that's really cool, and I definitely recommend you check them out, especially if you like cute things like this thing. And really, when you really see just how many of these games released and Nintendo made sure they were exclusive, they put money behind this franchise, it just begs the question, why did Hamtaro not get into Smash but Sora did? So I think it's safe to say the mid-2020s have been quite a turbulent time for Mega Man fans. I think that part's pretty accurate. Sure, the collections have been very plentiful and that's really awesome. The references in other games, sure, that's cool too. There's a coffee partnership. Cool, man. And while one may never really know when a brand new game is actually on the horizon, one of the biggest surprises of the 2024 Summer Game Announcement season, in my opinion, was the random drop of the entire Game Boy Mega Man line, also known as Mega Man World, on the Nintendo Switch Online Game Boy app. And if you focus really close on the trailer, you'll see that the life count corresponds to the game being shown at the time, which is just a very cute detail. I hope the person who was capturing footage got a raise. Now obviously I can't speak for everybody out there, but I was always someone who loved classic Mega Man. You know, I'm fairly well versed in all of them. My first one was 8, and then I played all the other ones, and I love all of them, even like the mid ones, like, I don't know, 4's kind of mid in my opinion, but I still really like it. Even though I've played them all a bunch, I never really gave the Game Boy games that much attention outside of the 5th one. So I figured, hey, now that the games are widely available on the Switch, I'll take some time out to put these games through their paces. I guess there's no harm in continuing this line of thinking for retro games too. I've already done it once before, so why not? Screw it, here we go. So I've been playing the Mega Man World games on the Game Boy NSO app, and I just want to talk about it. So while I think it would be the easiest to comment on Mega Man 5 first, since that is the one that I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with, let's do this in chronological order, because that's the order I played them in when they showed up on NSO. May as well, I feel like that's how a lot of people are going to give these a shot, which is important, but also keep in mind, this series actually starts off kinda rough. So let's start with Mega Man 1, also known as Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge, the only Mega Man game in this series to have a subtitle. We're never going to refer to it like that again. I think Mega Man World, from the Japanese title of Rockman World, that makes a lot more sense, differentiates the series just enough, so we're gonna keep that title going forward. And then you hop in, you got 4 robots to pick from, not 6, you only got 4, rest in peace, Gutsman and Bombman. But then once you dive in, it doesn't take long to realize that, yeah, this is certainly Mega Man on the Game Boy, alright. There is a story involved here, like apparently this game is supposed to take place in between the events of Mega Man 1 and 2 in like, cool, I guess. And I'm not saying that Mega Man games can't have a story whatsoever, but like, for this game, I don't care, man. I don't care. You can tell me that this was like a remake of the first game and I would believe you. Having the reduced audio quality, you know, having like the NES chiptune music and sounds brought into the Game Boy, like there's very much a charm to that. Seeing a lot of the mechanics from the NES games brought into level designs that are brand new, that's definitely a cool novelty as well. And also kind of following Mega Man 1 on NES, the controls are not great. Something that is definitely fixed in later entries, but Mega Man feels very sloppy in this one. I don't know why, because this was made by a different studio than main Capcom, I think. I also could be wrong on that, but regardless, Mega Man doesn't control all that great. So, thank God we have the NSO rewind functionality, because if you play through these, you're gonna want to take advantage of that. There's a lack of checkpoints, there's a lot of pixel-perfect jumps, there's like flying bullets that'll come across the screen that you don't anticipate, there's no E-tanks, you gotta deal with the game stuttering a bunch if there's too many things on screen. It's way more egregious than on the NES where the screen size is at least bigger. When it's already smaller because of the Game Boy and things are stuttering, it can definitely be a rough time. But yeah, like, again, once you dive in, it's just Mega Man. It's just more Mega Man. The same stages are there. If you play them on NES, you kind of have a good idea of what to expect from these stages. There's nothing really different about it. Like, some of the boss arenas are smaller, of course, so like your challenge and your difficulty, your patterning is going to be a little bit different on how you approach these bosses, but otherwise, it's exactly the same. Although one major downgrade, I think, and it's something that really... It's no big deal in the grand scheme of things, but for Mega Man fans, this is important, okay? When you jump on the boss gate, you just like kind of run through it. You don't do like the stop in midair thing, like it is bad. It's a bad boss gate. Also, these games go by like super quickly. You beat the 4 bosses, and then there's a middle stage. Oh man, it's like, oh, Dr. Wily's already there. It's been 20 minutes, that's crazy. You dive in, and not only does it seem like a fairly typical Wily stage, we have original music now. Like, okay, it took a while, but we have an original song. That's really cool. It actually has a nice melody to it. You know, there's some parts where the screen goes absolutely slow as all hell. Once again, the Game Boy could not handle this game. And then you get to the end of the stage and you find 4 teleporters, and you're like, oh man, it's time for the boss refights like in every Mega Man game. But then no, it's some of the bosses from Mega Man 2. Oh my god. I guess, I don't know if this, like, maybe back when this game came out, if this was a major plot twist. I don't know how much that has been advertised, but I mean, it's certainly cool. There's no levels for these guys, and you have to fight Mega Man 2 bosses with the Mega Man 1 weapons. That's kind of interesting, I guess. And you get their power. And there's not much more game after these bosses. So you just get these powers kind of for the sake of it? It's weird. This is a very sloppily put together game. But the cool part is once you get them all done, a new baddie shows up. Like, oh wow, finally. It's the first like fully original thing in this game. This is Anchor. His whole thing is he can jump around the screen and he has this sword that when he holds it up, it'll attract the buster shot that you're shooting out, and then he'll shoot it back towards you. Incredibly easy. Just incredibly pathetic and simple. He would show up in Mega Man Soccer after this, and good for him. The most interesting thing is really the lore that comes out of these guys, is the Mega Man killers, which Anchor is a part of. We'll talk into this more as we get through the later entries, but Dr. Wily made a set of 3 robots called the Mega Man killers, and you can tell what their modus operandi is. They want to kill Mega Man. It's interesting that they never show up in the NES game, but when Mega Man 10 came around and they did DLC, hey, look at that. A DLC stage. You have to pay for this, but you had a stage that was based off of the same level design from the level that we just did in Mega Man World, and then you fight Anchor in the NES style. That was cool, but here, it's whatever. It's just a means to give you the weapon that you're gonna need for the final boss. It's a pretty quick romp, and then you get to the Dr. Wily robot, and you can take out a few of its parts, and then I get to the final section, and I'm like, oh man, none of my things are working. What do I do? Oh, of course, it's the thing I just got from Anchor, where you gotta reflect the beams that it's shooting at you. It's incredibly easy. Like, I think maybe once again, you gotta look at these in the time frame that they released. It's probably super cool to have this game on a small screen, but now I beat this game in like 45 minutes. I kind of walked away thinking nothing much of it besides the fact that I think the Mega Man killers are cool. And let's just carry this energy into Mega Man 2, because if you thought it was just gonna get better from here, oh boy, that's not the case. Obviously, the irony is not lost on me on this, in that Mega Man 2 for NES is often considered to be the best one of the NES games. I disagree, I'm a Mega Man 6 guy, but I get it. Mega Man 2 on Game Boy released a couple months after Mega Man 1. Like, I'm not over-exaggerating on this, like, this is no hyperbole, it released a couple of months after the first game. So, that's a good sign. Mega Man 2 on Game Boy is the worst of the 5, and it is no question. Once again, you dive in, there are 4 bosses to check out, the remaining 4 that were not at the end of Mega Man 1, and once you dive into a stage, you notice something very peculiar. This music is absolute ass. I don't know what happened here. I have no idea what the circumstances were that led to music this bad, and it's like maybe the compositions themselves are fine. I've heard some remixes of the music that are not bad, but the pitch is so high, it's just ear-grating from start to finish. I don't know what compelled them to make new songs. It's not even like they're remixes of the NES songs like the first one were. Like the first game had like kind of demakes of the NES songs. This is all brand new stuff. It's so bonkers. I would recommend people listen to remixes of them because maybe there's some quality there, but in-game, ass. And then the level design is just a whole lot worse. The enemy placements are a whole lot worse. The sprites look weird, like you have the ability to slide now, which is kind of unnecessary, and like the sprite looks weird. His chin is like going into his body. It looks weird. Typically, I would just say like any Mega Man game, you kind of get the gist of it by playing it, and they're all at the very baseline good, but man, whoever they had making the level designs for this game specifically really didn't care. There's so much about this that's unremarkable, and you're just plowing your way to the end without much thought. There's still some Game Boy garbage, so once again, it's cool that there's rewind, because the difficulty that's here is not fun, it's just very frustrating. And then you beat all 4 guys, and then you get to Dr. Wily, and like once again, the sprites. What's wrong with Dr. Wily's chin? I'll give the game a little bit of credit though, because then you have a teleporter sequence that leads to 4 new areas, based on Mega Man 3 this time, and there's actually some levels here before you fight the bosses. That's good. The level design philosophy still, continues, so it's not all that exciting, but, once again, I'm sure the plot twist back when this game first came out blew some kids' minds. Brother, when you jump on Rush, he looks sad. I don't understand. He's like, "Father, why must you do this to me?" And then, immediately after you clear out all 4 teleporters, the floor opens up and another brand new bad guy. This is Quint. So apparently the story about this game is that Dr. Wily has a time machine now, and the rule set is he can't go to the past with it, he can go to the future and back. That's it. So what does he do? He goes to the future after Mega Man wins all the time, and he has been basically retired and turned into just a cleaning robot. He takes him, brings him back to the past, and remolds him to be evil, and that's what Quint is. Gave him a pogo stick. He's garbage. This is absolutely garbage at this fight. Like, Quint is garbage. He really lost all of his skills. Dr. Wily did not think this one through. He's also not even a Mega Man killer, and I don't know why this distinction exists. It's like, in 3 and 4, we talk about new robots that are part of the Mega Man killer's, roster, but Quint does not. He just is there. Once again, the lore is kind of cool, I guess. Like, apparently the story about this game is expanded in a Rockman Forte game on Wonder Swan, which is crazy. And then I think Quint shows up maybe in a comic somewhere. There's potential there, just not in this game because holy cow. And then you go into the last portion of the game and there's like floating clocks and stuff in the background to really emphasize the time machine stuff. There's no cutscenes in game, so unless you know the plot going into it, then you're just gonna be confused about why there's floating clocks. This Dr. Wily sprite is hilarious. Why is why is his entire being the size of Mega Man's head? And it's such a dumb fight too. It's like in 3 sections, and then when you beat one, he flies off and you just kind of watch him as he lands to another robot, and then his skin color changes? Cause why? I don't understand. Why? Okay. Wily escapes, you're in a rush thing that you go into space, and then you shoot Wily, and I guess he dies, cause like, what? How? Of all the times Wily's gotten loose, I don't know how you can survive that. And then that's it. It's not good. Don't play it. So I was hesitant to move on. I needed like an extra day after dealing with, I played both 1 and 2 back to back, and that was a rough night. So I needed to sleep a little bit before I moved on to the next game. And then I got to Mega Man 3. And this one, I can finally say, is actually pretty good. It's not remarkable. It's quite frankly like not remarkable in the slightest, but it is more faithful to the NES games. They didn't try to act like they were doing something new or fancy or trying to really harness the power of the Game Boy. It's like, nah, they just took the NES games, the features, the mechanics, the music, and just ported it down. That's it. That's all you really needed. Thank God. Except for the story, I guess. It's about like Wily drilling through the Earth's crust and wants to harness energy. Who cares, man? Once again, you jump in, only 4 robots to deal with, and once you dive into the levels, yeah, if you're familiar at all with Mega Man 3, this is pretty damn faithful. But the important thing here, one of the most important parts of a Mega Man game, is the level design, and yes, they clearly made it better. It's like objectively better. I don't think we can argue this. It's the best it's been yet. Thank God this game didn't release like just a few mere months after 2. Like that would have been a terrible timeline. They took their time and cooked and got something decent here. But I didn't expect much from this series anyway, so I was still pleasantly surprised. Like I went through this Mega Man game thinking, this is good, which first time I've gotten to say it in this video so far. And then you take out the 4 bosses from Mega Man 3, you got a brand new level that pops up, and it's like, it's pretty decent, not super long, but it's a decent little platforming challenge. And then you fight a brand new robot, but not like a robot guy, just like a robot thing. It's like a brand new mini boss. Holy cow! This is the giant Susie, and the sprites are pretty decent and animates really well. You got to actually think about how to approach it since you haven't fought something like this before. Oh, hey, okay, this is really looking up. And then similar to what we've been doing already, then you have 4 new robots to mess with, all from the following game, Mega Man 4. Same things still apply. Level design is decent, music is good. You know, once again, not remarkable compared to the NES game, but for what they accomplished on the Game Boy, it's good stuff. The biggest takeaway from these games, quite frankly, one of the coolest things as a Mega Man fan is just figuring out how to tackle these bosses with the power-ups from the previous game. That's neat, and it's something I would like to see Capcom somehow try to harness more of with future games. I don't know how they do it, but I think that'd be cool. And then another Wily stage pops up, and hey, look at that, another actual robot guy this time. This is Punk, the second in the Mega Man Killers roster. And he definitely looks a lot cooler with his like spiky elbow pads and his little mohawk. Like it's pretty cool. He's definitely more threatening than the other 2 fights that we've done before with Anchor and Quint. So that's nice. He's still no major threat, but certainly poses a higher challenge than the previous guys. And astute Mega Man fans will know that Punk actually shows up again in the series in Mega Man Battle Network 3. So that's kind of cool. You know, outside of like some graphical appearances in like Mega Man and Base, like that's a thing. There's a database that shows the killers in a newer style. That's cool. Once again, paid DLC in Mega Man 10 as well. I love that. There's not much of a stage for Punk in this game on the Game Boy, so a lot of the stuff in the Mega Man 10 stage is brand new, but hey, there he is. Cool stuff. So we get another Wily stage with more pretty decent level design. You know, once again, this whole game has been pretty decent so far. And then you got a Wily fight that doesn't put up much of a challenge, but graphically for the Game Boy, this is cool. I just appreciate something kind of new. But same idea, like having all these Robot Masters in the games are cool, but you don't really get a chance to utilize any of the powers because you do the 4 extra bosses and then the game is basically done. Like all you have to do is fight the Mega Man Killer, and the Mega Man Killer's weapon is the one that's going to be used for the final boss. So it ultimately, even though this game is still good, I think so far Mega Man 3 is the best one, it still feels like this whole Game Boy line in general was just more so them trying to squeeze money out of the Mega Man Stone. They just seem like cash grabs, which I respect for the Game Boy. There were a ton of Game Boy games that were based off of NES games, so fine. I at least respect them trying to do something different. You just gotta make it good. 1 and 2 are not. This one was. Hopefully we can move up from here. And like no joke, just like 5 seconds into booting up Mega Man 4, I could tell that they were finally trying. They were finally giving a damn, because the opening title screen song slaps. There's an opening cutscene that is shockingly animated and detailed. Like, I watched it through twice in a row because I was like, this is impressive. Like, this is incredibly impressive. You're taking something that is so whatever in reusing Mega Man bosses for a Mega Man game, but like, I was sold by the presentation of this. So good on you, whoever animated and composed the title screen stuff. Like, this is great. Once you dive in though, yeah, it's more of the same, but upgraded from 3. So level design, really good stuff, you know, considering that we're on the Game Boy. Ultimately though, because it's still reusing a lot of the themes and the music and the bosses of the NES games, it's still not remarkable, but it's the best we've got so far. But what's cool is they finally decided to add some new little tweaks to the general gameplay experience. The levels all have these letters that you can get that are not really hidden. They're actually always in plain sight, so you can get them, and they spell out the word beat. So then once you get all 4, beat can help you out. That's cool. The level select screen is different. You got the sort of rotation display now with a bit of what the stage is kind of going to look like on the bottom screen. Like, really impressive stuff. There are P chips now in the levels where you can use them in the in-game shop in between levels. So you can get things like super tanks and weapon tanks. The energy balancers in here. That's cool. One change that's kind of weird is the charge buster is in this game, and if you use it, Mega Man has a bit of a kickback to it, so he goes back a few pixels. Very strange. That never happens with the Charge Buster, but okay, sure, we're working a little bit differently here. Doesn't mess you up at all because now that the level design is decent, you don't gotta worry about pits and stuff and random spikes everywhere. Going back a few pixels, I mean, it just kind of, I guess, makes the Buster seem powerful, but it's the same Buster. I don't know, man, that's a weird call. But really, even though it is a big improvement, like we're talking about a bunch of upgrades here, don't take away the fact that this is still a pretty unremarkable experience. If you played the previous Mega Man to this point, the structure, exactly the same. You fight 4 bosses from one Mega Man game, there's a middle stage, and then you fight 4 bosses from the following Mega Man game. But now, the mid stage introduces the final Mega Man killer. This is Ballad, and he's kind of cool. I mean, he's the biggest one of the bunch. His song is kind of decent. Once again, has a unique stage that those gimmicks show up in the DLC stage for Mega Man 10. That's cool. I don't know if he's really any more threatening than Punk was. He shoots these bomb things that are kind of neat, but there's clearly only so much you can do with the screen size this small. He's fine, but the lore. Oh my god, the lore. You don't kill him at first, he goes away, only to come back later, I would assume? Oh my gosh. There's another mid-stage fight too with the satellite cannon. Hey, with this and the giant Susie, just cool stuff. They were actually trying with brand new boss fights. I like it. You take out the 4 bosses from Mega Man 5, and then it's time to fight Ballad once again. This time he's got sunglasses on, so he is way cooler. And then, in something that is brand new for the Mega Man World series, there's a substantial amount of gameplay after that boss fight. You don't just do one stage that takes 5 minutes and that's it. There's still, I don't know, it was like 20 to 30 minutes of game to go through. Awesome. There's unique level themes and boss fights. You get to use the new power-ups that you were just getting, cool stuff. This is one of the issues the previous games had. It's been fixed now. There is a boss refight section. Not a huge fan of that. Never really like when that happens in these Mega Man games. I always think that that's just very tedious. I don't really like it in any game, but it happens to be in almost every Mega Man game. Hooray. Not a fan, but okay. Once you get through that, there's another cutscene that's relatively well animated. What? You get a picture of back Mega Man? Wow, I never thought I would see Mega Man's back like that on 8-bit. That's good for you. And then you fight Dr. Wily's big robotic face and his 2 big fists. And it's definitely the best Wily fight so far. So that's kind of cool. And then, wow, another cutscene. Ballad sacrifices himself so Mega Man can go free. How sweet of him. Only to appear once again in Mega Man 10. Man, you can never kill these robots. That's crazy. It's they're robots. Dude, even the credit sequence, there's boss refights that you're not doing. It's controlled by the game itself, but you get to see something actually animate in the credits. It's the big thing with Mega Man 4 is that they just really upped the quality dramatically for a game that still is not all that remarkable. Up until this point, these Mega Man World games were just dead set on being hey, remember the NES games? And I'm sure there were definitely kids that only had a Game Boy, that this was their only way to play Mega Man games. Maybe they were fine with it. Luckily when it came to 3 and 4, they didn't have bad games. One thing that's nice about 4 is it's double the length almost of the previous games. Awesome. There's a lot of good game in 3 and 4 and not 1 and 2. So if anybody's wondering if you need to play them in order, don't, unless you're morbidly curious, just skip 1 and 2. 3 and 4 are decent, but now it's time for the main event, Mega Man 5. Mega Man World 5, Mega Man 5 World. whatever you want to call it, this is the only game in the Game Boy series that is completely different and unique and original out of all of them. So much so that I never called it Mega Man 5 Game Boy. I always just said Mega Man V. That's what the Roman numeral is, that's what it shows up on the logo. A good way to differentiate it, in my opinion, was just calling it Mega Man V. That's probably how I'm going to keep calling it until the day I die. Right away, you can tell that there's something different going on here. There's a fully animated cutscene that tells a brand new story. One day, Rock and Roll are just walking, they're just strolling in the grass, and this new guy, Terra, shows up out of nowhere, and now he wants to take over the world. It's like, oh wow, okay, that's crazy. And he's powerful too, you can't damage him? Wow. The world is now being attacked by robots from outer space instead of within. Oh, this goes deep. Now, mechanically, like, once again, it is very much the same thing, except one of the nice changes is that the Mega Buster is different and no longer gives you kickback from a fully charged shot. Now, it's a brand new Buster, the Mega Arm. If you shoot out a fully charged shot, your whole hand goes with it. That's kind of cool, and you can do some extra damage there, and you can't shoot until your hand comes back. It changed things up quite a little bit, and like, okay, cool. The real thing, though, about this game is, once again, everything is brand new. You still have the same level structure of 4 robots at first, then a middle stage, and then 4 more robots. But once again, the robots are new. I love this so much, and they're all based off of planets. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Neptune, like all that stuff. Even Pluto. No matter what happens to Pluto in the real world, it's representing a planet in Mega Man V, and that's important. And every single level introduces brand new things, like Venus' level being filled with bubbles, Neptune having you like walk around the outside and the inside of a busted up ship. Like I really like that, like a water ship, you seeing pipes and stuff like breaking as you're walking inside, but you start off outside on the top of the ship. I like that, that's a really cool aesthetic. There's new enemies aplenty, there's brand new music for all the stages, and they're all composed really well. This game is impressive right off the bat because it's not only the fact that it's original stuff, but that it works with the Game Boy hardware in such a way that, yeah, there is still some slowdown from time to time, but there's never really any point that feels frustrating. The level design is really, really well done here. Once you get to the middle stage, what's really cool is that the boss fight that takes place here is the Dark Moon, which is a brand new Yellow Devil variant. I know like the whole Yellow Devil trope is used in a lot of Mega Man games, but quite frankly, I'm a fan of every single time it does, so it's cool that they made a brand new one that's based off of the Star Droids, and you know, it's cool, and it's really, it has a nice sprite. There's so much that they were able to do with such a limited color palette. Fun little detail too, there's like a cutscene that happens right before the fight, and while the gameplay is like above the text box, once the text box goes away, the screen starts shaking and the level plane moves down with it. Nice touch, I like that, that's a nice touch. And then you go into space where the remaining 4 robots are. They didn't all invade Earth, some of them stayed all the way up there, and you go to fight them on their own turf. That's such a neat idea. The same level mentality still applies, like it's really good level design, really good music, it's cool having a bunch of new enemies and brand new boss fights to deal with. All great stuff, it's just great stuff from start to finish. Similar to Mega Man 4 as well, there are P-chips that you can get in these stages that you can use in the in-game shop in between levels. You know, that's a Mega Man staple, glad it's in the Game Boy game. After you take out all the Star Droids, it's time for a one-on-one encounter with Terra. So this is sort of replacing the whole unique Mega Man Killers or Quint idea. You fight Terra here, and he's not that much of a threat if you know what you're doing. I mean, that's typical Mega Man boss fight affair, but he still looks cool. I like his big anime hair, his big 90s anime hair, that's kind of cool. But then, oh my god, it's Dr. Wily again. Wow. Dude, and then a flying stage in space? Bro, this game keeps on delivering. God, I love this game. This game is awesome. Wily tries to stop you by shooting your way before you can get into it, but hey, you break open an entryway into his space station yourself, and then you go into it. It's, God, just the fact that there's like a place, like you can tell spatially where Mega Man is going throughout this entire adventure from Earth to space into the space station. It's cool. I like it. As far as storytelling goes in a Mega Man game, this is doing a good job. And then it's time for some more boss refights, but boss refights of the Mega Man Killers and Quint. Cool. They're just as easy as ever. Like they had some time to make Quint something worth a damn, but no. What I do like though is that this is a full-on stage. It's not a series of teleporters that bring you to the Mega Man Killers. It's one continuous stage where you fight them in order. Cool, I like that. Still not huge on refights, but the fact that they're refights from a set of different Mega Man games, big fan. And then you go ahead and do the typical Mega Man boss refights. You know, there's gotta be a worst part of every Mega Man game. That's just this one. You take out these big robotic hands in a multi-stage Wily robot fight, typical stuff, and then, when you think you're done even more, Wily gets away and summons this. This is Sunstar. Oh my god, the ruler of the Star Droids. This is what Wily was doing the whole time, trying to summon Sunstar? Oh, and then Sunstar kills him. Oh wow, betrayal. I never saw that coming. It's a pretty solid fight. I mean, once again, nothing too crazy. I just find it admirable that this is finally a time where Dr. Wily is not the final boss of one of these Mega Man games. Like, the Wily fight is not bad, but the Sunstar is the final fight. I like that. But of course, you take him out in no time, the star station starts to blow up, Sunstar tells you to run, you do so, you treat it to some more really beautiful Game Boy sprite work. The thing explodes, it looks really cool, honestly. Like, I'm a big fan of giant explosions. It looks pretty cool. A very somber credit sequence to end the Mega Man World series. So, going into these games, I had a decent idea of what to expect. I expected Mega Man 5 to continue to be great, and then like maybe one of the other games would be good. At least my expectations, were exceeded because there were 2 good games outside of Mega Man 5. 3 and 4, pretty decent. 1 and 2, not great. But even though 3 and 4 are decent, there's no reason to play them. Once again, this is totally a product of their time. Having Mega Man games on the Game Boy, taking those games on the go, wow, that's crazy. And these games should be accessible, for all the Mega Man fans out there. I was always kind of upset these games didn't show up in the Mega Man Legacy collections. So for the sake of just having a Mega Man fan out there wanting to experience everything about this series, it's cool that they exist, but ultimately, not great. Cool that you can play it. This was the first time you can play as Mega Man on the go. And going forward, we would see things like the Mega Man Game Gear game, which would kind of follow a similar mentality as the Game Boy ones. There was Mega Man Powered Up on PSP, another retake on Mega Man 1. I really like that game a whole lot. I would love to see that game get ported, as well as Mega Man Maverick Hunter X. Great games, which also leads me to maybe Mega Man Extreme 1 and 2 will be coming out in the near future as well. Never got to play those, so now I'm just like hedging my bets, because once it hits NSO, that'll be the time. Ape Escape. It's not as if this is a forgotten platformer by any means. If anything, this game and the series are fondly remembered by those who played it. And this is a first-party developed game too. Sony made this. Ape Escape is Sony's baby. You never really see Sony themselves making the platformers, they always take them from somewhere else. I mean, very recently there was that PlayStation VR game, Astro Bot Rescue Mission, and that game was fantastic. But yeah, that's really about it. That's all I can think of. That's all I can think of. And with the likes of Crash, Spyro, and even Medieval getting the remaster treatment, we can't leave Ape Escape hanging, so how about it? Let's generate some buzz here. Let's go back in time and take a look at the PlayStation 1 classic, Ape Escape. We're about to play something pretty good. The premise here couldn't be any simpler. Spectre, a white-haired monkey armed with a super intelligence helmet, has created an army of monkeys and has escaped from their home at Monkey Park. What's up, how you doing? They then raid the laboratory of the professor who created said helmet, which is also the home of a big time machine. A man of many talents, that professor.
It actually works.
Our protagonist, Spike, and his best friend Jake, or Buzz in Europe. Sorry, are there no Jakes in Europe? I wasn't informed. Are heading to the lab at the same exact time and get sucked up into the time machine just as it's being turned on by the evil monkeys. Spectre's plan is to rewrite history so he can be the ruler of the world. I don't really know how randomly placing aloof monkeys all over the place gets that done, but okay, sure. The professor gives you a lightsaber and a giant net. Go capture the escapee monkeys, stop Spectre, and save the world. Easy. Oh, and Spectre's also taken control of your friend Jake too. What a plot this is. This is the perfect wacky video game scenario. Oh no, the evil monkey is traveling through time to take over the world. Good thing this 10-year-old kid is here. Oh no, I've been spotted. Okay, no worries, let's just give it a sec. And just like that, we have blended right back into the environment. So Ape Escape was a pretty pivotal game back then due to Sony's newest innovation at the time, the dual analog controller. And yeah, I know this is a DualShock, it's not a dual analog controller, it's not the same thing, I agree. I am a sham. With this brand new control scheme, you're able to move with the left analog stick and aim your gadgets with the right. Completely revolutionary. Funny and absolutely true story, my first experience with this game was with one of those awesome PlayStation Magazine demo discs, one of the best ways to check out new PlayStation games. I also did not own a dual analog controller, I only had the original, but I still really wanted to check out Ape Escape, so for years the extent of my playtime was just being able to swap between the Stun Club and the Monkey Net, that's it. Mario had stars, Crash had crystals, Ape Escape has living, breathing, polygonal monkeys who want nothing more than to really just relax in whatever time period they ended up in. But of course we can't have that, so it is up to you, the player, to traverse these varied landscapes, beat them all up, and capture their knocked out bodies. Or even when they're just running for their life, either way works. I mean, you probably could make an argument that this is animal abuse. Yeah, no, that's all I got. To be fair though, they actually do fight back at times too. Okay then, so it's a story about self-defense. Got it. All jokes aside, the process of doing this is incredibly fun and satisfying. Ape Escape has such a unique sense of flow with your character and the gadgets that you get throughout the game. You do start off with just the club and the net, but throughout the adventure, you unlock a hula hoop that lets you run super fast, a propeller that gives you some verticality, a slingshot, even an RC car. You're given quite the lineup of tools to work with. And the monkey radar is always there to help point you in the right direction, and even give you a few stats as well as a humorous little one-liner about their personality. This one loves 70s funk, got good taste. This one is seriously on lookout. This one misses his mom and dad. Oh, that one's just sad. Lovably unstable, huh? Amen to that, brother. Oh man, who could forget the arcade classic? Kids! One of the best aspects of this game is the whole time travel thing. Each chunk of levels takes place in a different time period. You start off seeing dinosaurs, eventually you travel to the Ice Age, adventure through medieval times, all the way up to present day. Oh god, that's terrifying. Each era introduces level themes and gimmicks that are representative of their time. I mean, for crying out loud, at some point this 10-year-old kid starts driving a tank. I guess you could say he really isn't monkeying around here. This bit of variety is important because honestly, while satisfying for sure, the whole collecting monkeys thing, it does get pretty repetitive. Very sporadically, there are these monkeys that take actual skill to catch, but most of the time, it's just a matter of running up to them, hitting them, and catching them. Yeah, you do have to find them in the first place, but all it really takes is a little bit of platforming, and most of the time, they're just out in the open. Depending on the color of their pants, which is a really funny sentence by the way, they'll offer up some different challenges on how to tackle them. Like how the green ones are sort of like scientists, and they shoot off like a million rockets at you. Oh good. The blue ones are really fast, and also really sad. This doesn't really add much in terms of variety, but it certainly adds a lot to the game's charm. These monkeys became fairly iconic due to their design, and it's easy to see why. But it's the level design that keeps the game interesting, and exploration constantly feels rewarding, even if jumping is mapped to the trigger button. What kinda sick hell? The visuals are really impressive too. Everything here is super bright and colorful, and many of the stages have a great sense of atmosphere. Even inside the giant beast, Dexter. Gross. I will admit I am a total sucker for PlayStation 1 era pixelated 3D, and I gotta say, this game still holds up fantastically. It is a joy to look at. Special mention to the soundtrack too. It goes for this sort of drum and bass sound that you really don't hear too often in platformers. Bomberman Hero is like the only game that I think comes kinda close. The tracks are not only catchy and memorable, but they help define Ape Escape's style. It is a very distinctive PlayStation 1 era sound, and it is awesome. And of course, we can't forget about the voice acting too.
Spectre, what's going on here?
This also is a very PS1 era thing, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I think one of the weirdest parts about this entire game is there aren't even any boss battles here. Yeah, you will sometimes run into a strong enemy. Twice you do a race against your old buddy Jake. There is the final boss, that is true, but that's about it. It's all about that pure level after level gameplay, which is pretty odd for a platformer, but you gotta remember, this game at the end of the day was still a showcase for the brand new dual analog controller. Sony was probably a bit more preoccupied with just making sure the controls made sense for the entire game, instead of simply forcing in a boss fight for the sake of it that wouldn't have taken advantage of that controller. And I would say this is evidenced in the PSP version of the game, Ape Escape on the Loose. Since the PSP doesn't have a second analog stick, it loses not only one of the customizable gadget slots, but the precision in using said gadgets, and in my opinion, is a weaker version of the game because of it. They also changed the voice acting and made it better, so that kind of makes the game worse. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter which version of the game you play, Ape Escape is constant fun the whole time. Now, it may sound like I'm complaining about the lack of gameplay variety, but it would only really be a complaint if I didn't enjoy the game from start to finish. There are some issues though. The main issue with this game comes down to, once again, the repetition of catching the monkeys. Trying to complete this game 100%, it could be a bit rough. You are tasked with doing each level at least twice, since once you get the requested number of monkeys the first time through, you automatically get kicked out, which is pretty annoying. A lot of monkeys are locked behind a gadget that you don't get until the very end of the game, which is fair, but I think it would have been better if you were able to continue playing after getting the minimum monkeys, therefore you have more freedom. It's the same issue that Mario 64 kinda has. Sometimes I want to keep playing the level, but I gotta jump back in and waste some time loading it back up. Levels also have special Spectre coins spread throughout them. They simply unlock these little mini games back in the time station, which, like the rest of the game, is mostly a showcase for the dual analog controller. There's a boxing game, there's a twin stick shooter, there's a skiing game. They're neat, they're definitely not bad, but they're not good enough of a reason to really go out of your way to explore these levels from top to bottom. That's not to say that there is no good side content here. There is a time attack mode. Now you get the entire world to explore with every monkey to catch, no limitations. It's a pretty fun way to play the game. Although, like the Spectre coins, there's no real reward for doing this either, but at least it's fun. But yeah, when it comes to complaints, that's really all I can think of. Ultimately, Ape Escape is one hell of a platformer. It takes one very satisfying core concept and stretches it out throughout an entire adventure, where it is tied to other mechanics that are explored to the fullest. It may not be perfect, again, it is pretty repetitive, but it's so enjoyable that running around these different time periods and catching these monkeys, those slight complaints, they really don't matter to me much. And all of this to capture an evil monkey? That's a good enough of a reason to see the game through to the end, in my opinion. After capturing all 200 plus monkeys, you are off for one final encounter with Spectre. Off in the middle of space too. Pretty cool set piece. And before they fight, they talk a little bit, and they do this little thing where like Spectre asks about his old master back at the park. That's actually a pretty cool bit of character development there. Huh. But okay, never mind, he's still evil, just beat him up for a little bit, and in no time, he goes down. Credits. Ape Escape is an absolute PlayStation classic and is a must-play for retro platformer fans. This game could have very easily been just good at the time, due to it technically being a gimmick game for a new control scheme. But despite that, this game holds up super well. It's just fun, dude. You know, the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series is really weird now that I think about it. When it comes to all of the different side series in the Mario franchise, I feel like none are as all over the place as Mario vs. Donkey Kong. From gameplay styles to naming conventions and hell, even how the games became accessible to players. People often used to accuse Kirby of being the science experiment where Nintendo can try out a bunch of different ideas with very little risk. But in reality, you could almost say the same thing for these games too, especially in the later years. Only rivaled by like Mario Party on the e-reader, I guess? Now were these experiments successful? No? But it is still a surprisingly varied series, and that's enough to get me interested in this weird mini Mario-filled rabbit hole. These are also the games where Pauline finally got to shine. She didn't just suddenly reappear in Odyssey as the new Donk City mayor and that's it. She played a very pivotal role in this toy-based free market duel. And what better rivalry to base this weird series on than that of Mario and Donkey Kong, the original Nintendo 1v1. While both franchises would continue to grow and evolve as the years would go on, sometimes Donkey Kong outshining Mario in his own game, let's be honest here, these are the games where they both get to come back, be the stars once again, and remind us what brought them to the dance in the first place. And then toys got involved and the plot became something like a weird meta-commentary on consumerism. This is a weird series. Okay, so what if we completely turn this on its head? Our journey begins with Donkey Kong on the Game Boy, commonly called DK94, because it released in 1994. And now we have a specific comparison to Sonic 06. I know we're missing the Mario and Versus in the title, but hey look, there's Mario, he's versusing Donkey Kong, this counts. On the surface, like many other games on the Game Boy, this does just come off as a remake of the original arcade game, just with some extra moves. What, did you think Mario learned how to somersault in 64? No. This adventure took place a few years earlier, and there it is. It is really fun going through these classic stages in a new way, but once you think it's over, oh. Pulling off just a fantastic bait and switch, DK94 is actually a full-blown puzzle platformer. Each stage has a key, and you gotta figure out the best way to get to it and bring it to the locked door while avoiding an army of new enemies and getting it done in a time limit. Oh, and you got some classic bad guys here too, man. You got Bow Bow, Trash Can. There's a constant barrage of new mechanics as well. Each new idea is introduced with a little cutscene at the start of the worlds, and no gimmick ever overstays its welcome. You can pick up and throw things, Mario 2 style. There's wires all over the place that you can swing from. There are these little switches floating in the air that when you touch them, you can summon a trampoline or a flat surface. There is so much. There's even a bunch of boss encounters that manage to fit in perfectly, all being these little modifications to the original arcade idea of simply getting to Pauline. You do that, you win. And hey, even Donkey Kong Jr. is here. It is so easy to forget about this guy. Every appearance he has ever made after his own game was always so random, and then we just moved on as if it never happened, and then the poor guy lost his life trying to sell us on the Game Boy Advance e-reader. Bless his soul. DK94 is only about a 3-hour-long adventure, but it manages to do basically everything right. Even the music is really good, dude. The showdown at the tower theme did not need to go as hard as it does, but damn. Dude, damn, it is so good. It is simply put a great platformer on the Game Boy, an excellent example of an unexpected yet surprisingly faithful sequel, probably my favorite game on the entire console, honestly, and it is also a great showcase for the Super Game Boy. The use of colors is fantastic, the border is one of the best the peripheral has to offer, and there's even some voice samples. Money well spent. But now let's take this great foundation that we just created and make it all about consumerism. Mario vs. Donkey Kong for the Game Boy Advance. Okay, so like 5 seconds into just turning the game on, we're treated to DK lounging on a couch, watching TV, flipping through channels with a single buttoned remote, I don't know how that works, and he experiences hardcore FOMO, or fear of missing out, when a commercial for a new Mini Mario toy drops and the speaker implants subliminal messages into his psyche.
Hurry, buy one, buy them all! Buy them all! Buy them all! Buy them all!
Man, Donkey Kong is such an idiot. I'm glad I'm not stupid enough to fall for those types of marketing schemes. I am way too smart for that. Okay, but the real question is, how much do these mini Marios cost? Oh, you see, now that's too much. This is when DK realizes how to get them at a discount. You steal them instead.
What are you doing? What's going on here? Oh, yeah, mamma mia.
Oh yeah, Mario's definitely a New York City Italian. What ensues is another world-spanning adventure, this time to rescue all of these stolen toys and bring DK to justice. And yeah, this is really just essentially more of the same, if I'm being honest. It looks a lot more impressive this time around, almost going for a Donkey Kong Country route by using the sprites that simulate 3D graphics and on the actual console itself, not blown up. It does look really good, but otherwise, I mean, the movesets are basically the same, a lot of similar puzzles show up. It's just that now, rather than just carrying a key to a door, stages also have a second act where you have to make your way to the toy. This then culminates with a final stage of the world where you have to safely guide all of the toys to their toy box. And the mini Marios all yell if they're too far away from you. Getting big Baby Mario crying vibes from this, and I don't think that's a good thing. And then of course you go and kick DK's butt. It's almost the same exact thing as the last time, except Pauline's not here, and that's a big shame. But by playing it relatively safe, yeah, this is another fun time. There's a ton of levels to play through as well. Not only is there replay value in getting a star in the levels, there's also a whole slew of harder levels once you beat the final boss, utilizing a new Mini Mario with key mechanic. There's a lineup of expert levels on top of all that, and in the Japanese version, there's even stages unlocked with e-reader cards. Wait, there were Mario vs. DK e-reader cards? However, playing both DK94 and this back to back, I think the original game is so much better. The level designs in that game are a lot more compact, and you get offered a bunch of new ideas and gimmicks at a faster rate. All of the boss fights in Mario vs. Donkey Kong revolve around simply wailing damage on DK, where at least in DK94 you had those, but you also had the puzzle-focused encounters as well to offset them. Every single level gives you a tutorial video now, even if it's for a mechanic that you've already dealt with, and considering that replaces the original's cutscenes that introduced new worlds in a lot more charming way, yeah, I don't like these. It's all very nitpicky stuff. Mario vs. Donkey Kong is still good, but DK94 is definitely better in my opinion. Also, no DK Jr. I don't appreciate the disrespect. Both of these games are still great, and it is awesome to know that there are plenty of sequels out there that are surely going to be taking that formula and expanding it with a whole bunch of new possibilities thanks to newer hardware, and you know that is not at all what happened, and I just lied to you. Alright, so this is where things get just a bit bonkers. Here we have Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2, March of the Minis. I guess the Mini Mario toys were popular enough in the last game to just go overboard with them. The story is basically the same. New toys are dropping, DK has absolutely no concept of consumerism and supply and demand, except now, rather than steal toys, he steals the returning Pauline instead. Returning, by the way, with the design we now know her from in Odyssey. And Mario, I don't know, I guess he just didn't feel like it that day to help out, so he decides to utilize the toys and the toys alone to save the day. Friggin' lazy. And what we have now is a gameplay style more akin to Lemmings than an actual platformer. Once activated, the Mini Mario toys move on their own, and it is up to you to place all the pieces in a correct way thanks to the fancy new DS touchscreen to get them all to the goal. There's a bunch of varied level themes, new gimmicks to accompany them, pretty snazzy special plus mode levels that introduce extra minis to consider, a slew of unlockable hard levels. All of this content is exactly what you need to have a great puzzle game on your hands. It does go completely against the idea of the original games that started this series being an evolution of the original arcade game, but in its own bubble, yeah, it's fine. Each of the worlds has a little mini game to play, all of the boss battles are very much touchscreen focused, there's even a full-blown level creator, and being able to share your puzzles around on message boards at the time and whatnot was really cool. Well, I assume at least. Clearly I lack all creative talent. It's all just fine. Scoping out the new landscape and figuring out all of the proper timings and pathways needed in order to get a gold rating on the level can be really satisfying. Clearly, because they went ahead and made the same game like 5 more times. Though this is the only installment where you have a lot more direct control, to be fair. Being able to get the minis to stop on command, changing direction being a very common mechanic, and replacing the building blocks with expandable girders later on, the later games go for a more simplistic route, and personally, I do think that makes for a better game. In comparison, March of the Minis does occasionally feel like more brute forcing the toys to the goal rather than genuinely solving any puzzles. But that is pretty minor in the grand scheme of things. It's still fine. But since the following games are so similar, is there any reason to go back to this one, to go back to March of the Minis? No? The 2-screen cutscenes are kinda cool though. A few years later, exclusive to the DSiWare service, we got Mario vs. Donkey Kong Minis March Again. It's the same game. Like, okay, the level designs are new, the minis have a few more frames of animation now, so that's kind of nice. And like I just implied, you can no longer mess with the toys' direct movements after setting them off, which is better in my opinion, but I mean, they really couldn't be bothered giving this a whole new coat of paint. Even the story is exactly the same, except now it's presented as an animated slideshow. Ooh. Put these two games side by side, you cannot tell the difference. You see, the joke's on you, they're both March of the Minis. Wait, what's this? Guest mode? Oh yeah, you know, for when you have guests over and they want a little sampling of this game but no more. It's a common occurrence, I'm surprised more games don't have that. In actuality, it is just the main game, but lacking the ability to save your progress. So, finally a modern take on the no save mode from Sonic 3, I guess. Who played this? Did you play this? You probably didn't play this. DSiWare was such a weird service, man. I for one am astounded that the same service that brought us Mario Clock and Calculator didn't bring us a banger of a Mario puzzle game right here. I am furious. The true smart move is to save all the hits for a real sequel. Here we go, Mini Land Mayhem. New toy drops, Donkey Kong can't get it, steals Pauline in protest. Okay, we get it. So I do want to kind of immediately knock on this game because it is more of the same, but honestly, I actually did really like this one. It all comes down to the refined level design on top of the more refined control scheme of focusing solely on the environment around the minis while they all just move along reacting to your changes. It plays more like Minis March Again, but with level designs that match it a whole lot better. Stages also have an extra collectible coin to focus on. You very quickly have to start managing multiple mini types at once, needing to guide them to their own respective door instead of everyone piling up into a single one. And also, the music for the first world is a remix of the main theme from Super Mario Bros. 2. Oh my god. It is very, very rare, but every time Nintendo remembers that game's existence, it just fills me with joy. Going into detail about this game makes it really, really hard to sell it any more than it just being a really polished puzzle game, and probably the best the formula has seen yet. It's no DK94, but this I still like. The minigames are, once again, pretty neat. There are still a ton of levels to play through. The construction mode returns that we still can no longer utilize. That is still very upsetting. The cutscenes, like last time, aren't great, but for a late era DS game that I'm pretty sure nobody played, and I am not sure why Nintendo made it in the first place, yeah, it's pretty good. Alright everybody, I have a never before seen concept for you. You know those two Mario RPGs that we got? What if we add Luigi? The year is 2003, and the Game Boy Advance is well into its life cycle, and shockingly enough, there is no original Mario game in sight. Yeah, we got a couple of quality ports here or there, but nothing in terms of a brand new adventure starring the portly plumber. Despite that, Nintendo insisted on constantly giving us the same version of Mario Bros. Across multiple games. Why did you do this? I don't understand. And that is where newcomers Alpha Dream come in, developing an RPG featuring not only Mario, but his lesser-known brother, Green Mario. You gotta remember here, at this point, Luigi getting a headline role was kind of a big deal. Luigi's Mansion was the first time he was more than the typecast player too. We don't count Mario as missing in this house. So the idea of not only playing as Luigi, but both brothers at the same time in a brand new adventure? Well, boy howdy, sign me up. It's also the game that added striped socks to Luigi's canon, so that's good to know.
Nintendo!
Classic. Alpha Dream is, of course, known for this series, but at the time, these devs didn't really have much under their belt. They made Hamtaro Rainbow Rescue for GBA. That's cool. Not the first and probably not the last time I'll bring up these Hamtaro games on this channel, I swear. But more interesting, Tomato Adventure. I don't really know much about it, but it looks very similar to what they would go on to work on soon after. And that's good enough for me. It's an RPG that never left Japan, will probably never get any recognition from Nintendo ever again, and will be quite a while before a fan translation is completed so I can understand why tomatoes are the main aesthetic here. Not gonna lie, I'm very confused. As of late 2019, Alpha Dream shut their doors after filing for bankruptcy. Now, this doesn't mean that the series is done with. Need I remind you, Nintendo owns both Mario and Luigi, but it's definitely the end of an era. This is a very fascinating franchise that I feel doesn't really get talked about all that much. They just happen to be the Mario RPGs that you find on portable consoles, and that's it. 5 games and 2 remakes. That is certainly an impressive lineup, and I figured now is a better time than ever to take a look at what this entire series is all about. Starting off with, of course, Superstar Saga. Does anybody else remember when Nintendo advertised this new sub-series using live-action shots of 2 boys playing around? That was weird. Can't say I don't have a few more questions, but hey, I got the game anyway, so clearly they were onto something. Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, aka the game where Mario and Luigi dance. Following the trend the original Super Mario RPG started, Superstar Saga tells the story of the Mushroom Kingdom under peril from a brand new threat. That of Cackletta and her assistant, Fawful. After disguising themselves to meet up with Princess Peach, they managed to steal her voice and replace it with bombs. Whoa, that's pretty sick, dude. And this is all to take control of the powerful Beanstar in order to take over the kingdom. So it's time to, of course, bring in the Mario Bros to set things right. I always loved this part here, getting to play as Toad right at the beginning. It is the only time in the game you can do this, but it does a good job letting you know right off the bat that this is going to be a bit of a different journey. I mean, for crying out loud, Toad sees Mario naked. I wouldn't want to wish that upon my worst enemies. During this opening segment, two of the series' prominent features start to shine. First off, the humor, primarily from Luigi. Paper Mario was certainly charming and funny as well, but more of that stuff is certainly not a bad thing. Luigi didn't even want to be on this adventure, but my boy, he didn't have a choice. And all of the original designs for the characters too, it's so cool. Whether it be these quirky redesigns of series staple characters, or brand new ones that are very much out there. It's just very pleasant and refreshing to look at. And the bosses in particular are really neat. One of them is like a hermit crab with a Christmas tree shell. Finally, my fantasy fulfilled. And we have all of this on top of exploring a brand new land, the Bean Kingdom. I don't know what compelled the developers to make a land based on beans, but hey, it works. As you progress, the story stays pretty straightforward. A couple hours in, you actually get to encounter Cackletta and the Beanstar. Tackling the main antagonist in a battle that isn't the final one is something the series would go on to do quite often, and it's kinda cool to see. But naturally, of course, that's not the end. Just when you think things are all nice and safe, Fawful takes an injured Bowser and implants him with Cackletta's soul, creating the incredibly disturbing looking Bowletta. Another trend this series would work with in the future. Oh, and why is Bowser injured, you may be asking? Well, that's because after Bowser was shot out of a cannon and presumably lost his memory, this little guy here, Popple, threw a mask on him, called him Rookie, and recruited him as his partner. And after a battle that led them flying way up into the sky on an enraged Beanstar, and just as Bowser's memory is getting back to him, they all fall off and scatter. Bing bang boom, Bowser looks scary now. It's totally the lack of nose and the addition of breastplates. Cackletta really knew how to assert her dominance. At the core of the experience, yeah, this is a pretty standard, lighthearted RPG. Dare I say, a gateway RPG. A game that follows all the tropes of the genre, but simplifies them to a bare bones level to keep things straightforward and at the forefront, fun. It's a style that the previous Mario RPGs went for, but there was a lot of stuff here that makes it different than those previous attempts. And it all lies within the brothers' actions being at your fingertips at all times. Well, until one of them gets like abducted or something for a while. This game is bonkers. One brother is controlled by A and the other with B. That simple approach keeps this entire quest engaging, from controlling each of their jumps for platforming or timing their dodges when being attacked. And yeah, platforming, there's a ton of it here, and it feels great to do. And throughout the adventure, you also gain a bunch of new abilities that can be used for traversal in the overworld, and new attacks for battles. And speaking of, the battles retain their action command system as well, a must-have for RPGs of the Mario variety. And something pretty cool that I always appreciated, you learn the majority of your new moves from other duos. They really took this whole red and green pair working together thing, and went all out with it. And it immediately gives this series a unique identity. Admittedly though, the fire and lightning moves that you get do seem like a bit of an afterthought. Unlike jumping or using a hammer, there's rarely any benefit of using them in battle, and the overworld puzzles that you do use them in are far from clever, but hey, at least we get to see the brothers getting a massage. That's always nice. And then we have Bean Kingdom itself. I love this place. On paper, a lot of it does seem like your traditional Mario flair, just with beans, but a lot was actually done here to let you know that these aren't the lands that you're familiar with. For one, each section is named after some sort of synonym for laugh. Hoo Hoo Village, Chuckle Huck Woods, Tee Hee Valley. That's really clever, I like it. Really adds to the cartoony charm here. And admittedly, since this is on the GBA, I remember thinking to myself for a while that the world felt pretty small. But an hour or so into the game, at the top of Hoo Hoo Mountain, there's a telescope that you can interact with. Suddenly, whoa, this place is actually huge, and you get to visit every inch of it. It's a good thing you have your trusted passport on you at all times. It may seem pretty minor, but I would argue this goes a long way to world building. There's only so much you can convey on a small screen, so getting to see this huge landscape in the palm of your hands, I love it. And there is such a handful of memorable moments sprinkled throughout the entire landscape. Moving from one area to another via a minecart segment, or riding atop of Luigi transformed into a surfboard. You get to explore a brewery that's creating a ton of the popular drink Chocola Cola, before fighting a monster made out of Chocola Cola. After going inside Woo-Hoo University, you are being greeted by the viruses from Dr. Mario. And these spouts of water that you find early on, you can get Mario fat off of them. This game does everything. There's also that part where Luigi dresses up as Princess Peach and, Not gonna lie, he nails the look. Oh, and that's right, there's also that part where Gino shows up to explain that one random minigame, and then that would be the last time he ever made an official appearance, aside from a costume in Smash Brothers. I'll never forget. Playing this game is a ton of fun, but as time goes on, signs of first game in the series-itis do start to show. Things that later games would do better that end up showing some slight faults with this first attempt. Unlike the rest of the series, there are no gimmicks tying anything together. It is pure Mario and Luigi gameplay, which is fine, but just know that this is the only game in the series to not have some sort of overlying concept aside from purely going on an adventure. And also, the game is pretty short, clocking in at about 10 plus hours. Which again, totally fine, but it is also super easy. Whenever you level up, you have a choice as to where some skill points will go. Just keep adding points to attack and this game is a total cakewalk, nobody stands a chance. It's not bad since it's all still a matter of mastering the timing-based moves you have access to, but it's certainly odd to have really no incentive to grow the other stats, unless you wanna just make the game harder for yourself. The stash stat is pretty neat though, raising this grows your chances of critical hits and lowers item prices. Cool. I just don't see any reason to put any extra points into it. Granted, I guess it's not too different than playing Paper Mario and strictly upgrading flower points, but I still feel like you have to strategize around your decision there. Here, whether or not you main the attack stat really just makes the game easier or harder for yourself. That's it. The simplest bosses that took a few tries for me when I was younger don't stand a chance anymore. They go down in like a minute. Honestly, I know these were small complaints, but they're the only ones I have. I love this game to death. I just don't want to come off as biased, okay? Okay, thank you. Regardless of how you lay out your stat points, the end of the adventure is still pretty cool. After all the trials and tribulations you face along your journey, you eventually travel to Bowser's floating castle, rocking that same brick and lava aesthetic that we're all familiar with. And within, you get to fight the returning Koopalings. I always loved this series of fights. While most people remember New Super Mario Bros. Wii as the return of the Koopalings, yeah, this game did it earlier. It's a great use of them too. Each one is presented with a different gimmick rather than being slightly more powerful attack sponges. I am a big fan. The platforming here is really solid too. Bowser's castle in this game is just sweet overall. And then there's the final Cackletta fight. Oh man, the final fight. The initial form is a bit of a pushover if you keep attacking her head on, especially with an all-out attack stat. Holy cow, like 30 seconds is all it took, I swear. But then she inhales you and you get to fight Cackletta's soul. The atmosphere is eerie. The music, heart-pounding. You start with 1 health. Okay, yeah, this is cool and all, but it is also a bit of a problem. While this would definitely set the stage for future epic final fights in the franchise, a common complaint with this game in particular is the difficulty spike with this encounter. And to be honest, it is the reason why I do like to play this game on the self-induced, quote, easy mode. Basically, it's a fight that you can get good at, but the game doesn't properly prepare you for what's in store. Dodging attacks is a lot more difficult, opening up the weak spot takes a decent amount of time, she'll regularly heal herself, and if you screw up and die, you gotta go back and do the fight before it once again. Since I've beaten this game multiple times already, this is a total breeze, but I have heard many stories of people who have played this game for the first time hating this fight, and I can see why. If you are at all familiar with this series, you already know that final battles here are a big deal, and this one, unfortunately, is one of the weaker ones. But hey, with enough perseverance, Cackletta's soul is gone for good. Bowser returns to normal, and before he wakes up, we leave him to fall with the crashing ship. Poor guy didn't know what hit him. With the day saved, the gang ride off into the sunset, wrapping up the first adventure in this new series. At the end of the day, Superstar Saga is a simple, fun, and funny RPG. There's like that one escort mission in the desert that kinda sucks, and there's a fetch quest near the end of the game that does feel like a bit of padding, but they're all relatively minor blemishes, honestly. If anything, that final fetch quest is the only time in the game you're encouraged to explore the entirety of Bean Bean Kingdom so you can get to the paths that you pass over by going through the main adventure. It is definitely padding, that's just what it is, but I always enjoyed running around to gather fruit, to feed the different colored Yoshis, to spice up their special movie theater. That's just cool. Any place showing a Kirby and Starfy movie has my support 100%. There's a few side quests that you can tackle too, like making a bunch of shirt patterns. Minigames that are mandatory during the adventure have some high score challenges when you return to them, and probably the most famous of all, beans. Back in the Star Beans Cafe, you can take a ton of different beans that you've collected along the journey and assist Professor Egad with making a bunch of different blends to gain some stat points and also obtain some extra prizes. But what's known about this quest isn't what's here, it's what isn't here. Taking a look at the cut content from the game shows that not only were you originally making these blends for Egad, but also for other Nintendo characters. Captain Olimar, Samus, Link, Fox McCloud, the Excitebike Racer. This would have been so cool in the final product. You already get items based on these characters too. It makes their removal seem all the weirder. Sadly, it would be a few more years before we get to see Wario letting his gas loose onto the world. But after all this time, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga remains one of the most memorable Mario adventures. It is part of the 1-2 punch that made Luigi a character worth caring about, and it is easily one of the finest games the GBA has to offer. Oh yeah, the 3DS version. 14 years later, we were graced with a remake on the much more powerful 3DS, and it's pretty sweet. I wanted to focus on the original release for this video since it holds up so well, but to be honest, this is probably the best way to experience this game nowadays. It looks better, it sounds cleaner, there's a ton of quality of life improvements like full analog control, there's an easier way to swap between all your bros abilities. When you're in battle, the alternate bros moves are now separated from the original ones, which is awesome because now you're not required to remember a few button combos. And you can speed up cutscenes, thank God. There is amiibo support as well, which I mean, it's a thing. We got some neat figures out of it, so that's nice, but the content itself, not too compelling, honestly. The biggest argument against this version is the, quote, lack of charm in the transition to a new console. And trust me, I love me a good pixelated aesthetic as much as the next guy, but damn, this game still looks super good. There are certainly elements that should have been brought over to maintain that original identity, like why did you change the tree? That was far from the biggest issue about the original game. But when you look at the entire picture, it's really not too much of a downgrade, I feel. And unlike the other 3DS games in this series that opted for 3D worlds, for this remake it plays on 2D art instead, with much more advanced lighting effects, and it is pure eye candy. This also gives us a smooth 60 FPS too, and man, it is so good to see up close. And even though Cacletta is still relatively tough here, it's like one of the only things in this game that's a 3D model, and that's pretty sick. There's no Geno anymore though, that kinda sucks. And those movie posters that I mentioned earlier got changed to more fitting art for the series, which I guess is understandable. I still want a Starfy movie though. And this game also doesn't support 3D, I know, contain your tears. In general though, the pros definitely outweigh the cons. Just don't play that new Bowser's Minions mode. Wow, it's so bad. It provides more story details to show you what's happening when Mario and Luigi are off somewhere else, and that's kinda neat, but oh man, is this ever the most boring thing I've ever done in my life. It's like this squad building thing of a bunch of the game's enemies, and as a commander, you issue orders to your group, and on paper, sounds pretty cool, kinda sounds like Pikmin, but in practice, oh man, there is so much time that goes by with you barely doing anything. I can't imagine a single instance where this isn't the worst thing ever. This Beans War. I genuinely appreciate the effort to add something new here, I do, but I would argue the core game is so strong, this shoehorned side mode simply wasn't necessary. At the end of the day, it is nice having all of these games in this series now playable on 3DS. I love that Game Boy Advance version, I have so much nostalgia for it, but it's really cool being able to now have everything under one roof. That makes this remake worth it for that alone. Yeah, you're gonna want to remember I said that for the future. If you enjoy Mario RPGs, you already know that Superstar Saga is one of the finest. It does sort of fumble at the very end, and that entire side mode in the 3DS version is hot garbage, but on the whole, fantastic game, and it is the great start to a fantastic series with many highs and many lows. But let's say you're not into RPGs, but for whatever reason, this cartridge in particular really stuck out to you. Well, need I remind you, you can totally bypass the core adventure and just play Arcade Mario Bros. Why did they do this? The Game Boy Advance is home to a fantastic library of games. Even when you just look at Nintendo's output, we got great new IP like Drill Dozer and Golden Sun, series that made their localized debut in great fashion like Advance Wars and Fire Emblem, and awesome entries to long-running franchises like Metroid Fusion, Minish Cap, Wario Land 4, so many good games. Nintendo treated their properties really well on their new advanced piece of portable hardware. Except for Mario. Did you ever notice that despite being the golden child, Mario's lineup on the Game Boy Advance is pretty damn sad? Superstar Saga was awesome, the same can be said for Mario vs. Donkey Kong. The sports games weren't all that bad. Party was though. Oh god, Pinball Land. I keep trying to forget that one. One of the more interesting things about the GBA's life is that we never got an original Mario platformer. All these years later, despite being as successful as it was. That's really weird. That being said though, obviously we did get a few games that would otherwise fit the bill. The Super Mario Advance series. Super Mario Advance. One could easily see this and think, oh yeah, you know, just a bunch of Mario ports. And somebody else could think, oh yeah, that time Nintendo was very chronologically confused. Mario 2, then World, Yoshi's Island, and then 3. Oh no, Super Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Bros. 3 is still one of the best titles Nintendo has ever come up with. But you may also notice that there's one main Mario game of the era missing from that list. The original Super Mario Bros. There was a port to the GBA as part of the classic NES series, certainly a cool novelty at the time, but now, squished Mario just comes off as really cursed. But in all actuality, Super Mario Advance was simply following the trend set back on the Game Boy Color with Super Mario Bros. Deluxe. It's not like it's all too special nowadays or anything like that, but it is easily a better version of the classic. Screen crunch is the most notable thing about this, so it's definitely not the most ideal way to play the game, but it's actually not that bad. Probably because I've already played these stages like 100 times over at this point, so it's all muscle memory by now. You can keep shrinking the screen. I'll still find my way to the end. The cool thing though is all of the extras that got thrown in. There's a couple new interface additions like a main menu and even a world map. That's pretty cute. There's this fancy new challenge mode where levels are now populated by 5 red coins, as well as a hidden Yoshi egg, and there's even a bonus challenge to score enough points. This really retools how you approach a Mario stage, and it's a lot of fun. Ah, you versus Boo, this mode is so cool. This is a series of brand new stages all based around racing and blocking your opponent with these special boxes. You can also go through this with another player, which is really awesome. They brought this game back out of nowhere for one of the Nintendo World Championships, and it was genuinely one of the most exciting parts of that night. There's a couple of extra goodies too, most of which actually use the old Game Boy camera. That's kinda neat. And even the sequel, Lost Levels, is here as well, under the title For Super Players, which, you know, more bang for your buck, I guess. Game still sucks though. Adding new content to classic Mario games like this would presumably be the basis for the games that would soon after hit the Game Boy Advance. Now I'm assuming that most of you have already played these games, at least the originals on the NES and Super Nintendo, so I'm gonna spare you a legitimate review of the core games here, because yeah man, hot take, Super Mario World is pretty good. I'm glad I finally got to get that off my chest. Instead though, I think it's interesting to see how these versions differ from their originals. They didn't just port these games and call it a day, each one includes a handful of differences, either due to the console that they were released on, or simply being a cool new thing that you can't find anywhere else. One of the most notable inclusions is that of a retooled arcade Mario Bros. Yeah, that extra menu option that's also found in Superstar Saga, all 4 of the Mario Advance games feature this as well. All of the box arts boast of this really fancy 4-player multiplayer, and I hate to burst your bubble here, I really do, but it's just for Mario Bros. And for years, even back when I talked about Superstar Saga, I never knew why they kept including this in so many of their games. But leave it to the comments section of all places to let me know why. I never realized this, but as long as you have multiple GBAs, a link cable, and at least 2 of these games, then you instantly have access to something you can play multiplayer. It seemed like just this weird inside joke for so long, but suddenly, it makes a ton of sense. So hey, kudos for keeping portable multiplayer alive, even if I had no idea what you were doing for so many years. When it comes to the main core of these, they are the same games that you remember. Mario 2 and 3 are more based on their versions that were found in Super Mario All-Stars though, which is still pretty cool. Obviously, they're more graphically advanced than the NES versions, and personally, those are the versions that I grew up with, so they're my preferred versions in the first place. However, as you've also probably noticed, the color palettes are a lot more washed out than those originals. They just look kinda odd when put up side by side with their sources. Well, actually, this was done to compensate for the darker screen on the early GBAs. The brighter colors simply made things pop out more. If you've ever played the GBA port of Donkey Kong Country, it is very apparent there as well. However, in between the releases of Advance 3 and 4, in early 2003, Nintendo released the GBA SP, featuring a backlight, a feature that other handhelds were already doing years prior. Holy cow, I'm surprised they really got away with this for so long. And, well, since it wasn't really much of an issue anymore, the portable version of Super Mario Bros. 3 more so resembles the original color palette. I never minded the more washed out colors, but it's still nice to see a more accurate design here. As far as the gameplay goes, Super Mario World and Yoshi's Island are the most similar to their console counterparts. There really isn't that much here that makes these a whole lot more than the Super Nintendo versions on the go. There is now an opening cutscene for World, showing Mario and Luigi enjoying the island while Peach gets kidnapped along the way. Basically the same exact thing that happened in New Super Mario Bros. 2. Once you dive in though, this is certainly Super Mario World, alright? They did manage to fix that one stray pixel in the original's title screen, so that's really nice. Yeah, that's totally a thing. I was cursed with this knowledge, so now I'm paying it forward. Luigi also plays differently here, accompanied by a brand new look. In the All-Stars version of Mario World, he had an original sprite there as well, but he still played exactly like Mario. Here, he falls more in line with how he looked in the first Advance game, and he also has some of his typical control quirks, like a higher jump and worse traction. Hey, it's minor, but it's still nice being able to play a familiar game in a slightly different way. The Dragon Coins are also more useful now, being an actual collectible that works towards 100% completion rather than just being there. Finding all of them gets you a nifty little cutscene, and then all of the coins just return to their original locations, but now they have Peach's face on them instead. Oh, thank goodness, that's what the original game was missing. Yoshi's Island has even fewer changes. There's a new world total screen. That's nice. The red coins are harder to distinguish now. That's not nice. There's a new world select map. Oh, I found this new room in level 1-8. That wasn't there before. Yeah, this is just Yoshi's Island. The big new thing that really stands out is 6 brand new secret levels, one in each world. They're all much bigger in size than the original stages, and they're really fun. Difficult to fully complete as well. I mean, damn, okay. This ends up making the overall level count a nice even 60, and that is just satisfying to see. Otherwise, yeah, man, this is Yoshi's Island on the go. Did you ever find it weird how often they kept porting this version of the game and not the Super Nintendo original? 3DS ambassadors and Wii U owners got the GBA port, despite SNES games being a totally viable option on both. Did the fuzzies make the Super Nintendo version too much of a pipe dream, so you had to make an entirely new piece of hardware to finally bring the game back to us? Ultimately, both versions are good, but since they're more or less identical, the console version offers undoubtedly the more definitive experience. Aside from those 6 levels, they're pretty cool. Now, I know I'm gonna go out of order here, but hell, didn't stop Nintendo. Let's talk about the first Super Mario Advance, since this one has a few more noticeable differences. First and foremost, I always loved the opening cutscene, the characters emerging from the shadows before things widen up for the main attraction. That little window is actually the exact resolution of the original Game Boy, and considering this was a launch title for the GBA, a console that can also play those older games, it is a pretty effective way of showing off the graphical upgrade of the new system. Now, why they chose Super Mario Bros. 2 as the game to kick things off, I'll never know, but here we are. Some of the changes here are smaller, simple bells and whistles. They can now stretch and mangle sprites whenever they want to, and they never once waste an opportunity to prove it. I don't know what this is. I don't think anybody's been able to figure this one out. There are a bunch of extra large Shy Guys that can now be found in random spots, and I gotta say, kudos on the jiggle physics. I'm a big fan. You can now tear the ribbon off of Birdo, rectifying the main complaint everybody had with the original. We now have red coins to collect, and there's also an extra Yoshi challenge mode, hiding a few Yoshi eggs in all of the levels, no doubt influenced by Super Mario Bros. Deluxe before it. There's even a brand new boss with Birdo. Never seen before, never seen since. It just sort of exists here in this bubble as an interesting piece of Mario trivia and nothing more. Otherwise, yeah, this is a modified Super Mario Bros. 2 on GBA. This was the first game I got for the console, and I played it a ton, so while it may have been a bit of an odd choice, I'd say it was a good one. And all that's left is Super Mario Bros. 3, and on the surface, we have another faithful adaptation of the classic. We got another new opening cutscene, that's pretty nice. Anytime stories that previously only existed in the game's manual gets thrown into the game itself is always nice in my opinion. Otherwise though, what makes this version interesting isn't in the main game, it's in all of the extras. Allow me to reintroduce the e-reader. I've kinda gone over this weird peripheral already in the past, but during its short existence, Mario Advance 4 is definitely Nintendo's strongest attempt to get people to care, even packing in some cards with new copies of the game. By linking up a GBA with the game to another GBA with an e-reader, what do you mean this didn't take off? You're able to put in new content into this game. Replays of high-level gameplay, new items for your inventory, including the cape from Super Mario World, which is honestly just really surreal, and easily the coolest of all, brand new stages, all accessible in the special World E. You got really good level designs, enemies from other games, grass you can pick up from Mario 2. All of these years later, this is still such a wild inclusion. And it really sucks that barely anybody got to experience it. I had a few of these cards growing up, but man, nowadays these things are really not all that easy to come by. You can definitely get them by a simple online search, but they are nowhere near as prominent as, say, some random series of amiibo cards. And it didn't help that only about a third of all of the cards actually released outside of Japan, leaving over 20 levels unavailable to unlock by the intended means. And that is such a shame because this is, without a doubt, the most interesting part of the entire Super Mario Advance series, and easily the best thing the e-reader's ever done. Yeah, it's finally time to dethrone taking NES Pinball and splitting it up across 5 cards. The time has finally come. That's no longer cool. It never was cool. But just when you think this story is over, well, leave it to Nintendo to re-release Super Mario Advance 4 on the Wii U's Virtual Console with all of the e-reader levels in tow. The content has been accessible via hacking for years already, but to have an official way to play these otherwise thought to be lost stages is really, really cool. One of the underappreciated highlights of the Wii U's life. And yeah, that about sums up the entire Super Mario Advance series. Just pretty cool. Versions that do go beyond basic simple ports with plenty of interesting changes found throughout them. I think the smaller screen size easily disqualifies them from being the definitive way to play these games, but if you grew up with the GBA, chances are this is how you got to experience them. And ultimately, they're not bad versions of these games. Looking back, it is forever going to be weird that we never got an original Mario platformer on the Game Boy Advance, but enough effort was done with these titles to still make them relatively worthwhile, and this mindset would definitely continue on when Super Mario 64 got a similar treatment on the DS. But that's for another time. If you consider yourself a bit of a Mario historian, then I definitely recommend checking these games out. Just be mindful that if you do pick these games up on the Wii U, they totally lack multiplayer support. So all of those crazy arcade Mario Bros multiplayer sessions that you were just starting to plan out, you're gonna have to do it elsewhere, I'm sorry. Damn it, Nintendo, you were this close. This is why the Wii U failed. These games are such a massive part of my childhood. So many memories were crafted with these 3 adventures. Like many others out there, I started off my PlayStation journey with Crash Bandicoot. And likewise, I also spent a ton of time with those games. But conveniently enough, as that trilogy was coming to a close, and all we were getting from that orange marsupial were spin-offs, the era of the Purple Dragon was just beginning. Starting off, of course, with Spyro the Dragon. Insomniac Games, a company known for franchises like Ratchet & Clank and Resistance, and other one-off games like Sunset Overdrive and the upcoming Spider-Man, got their start with Disruptor. Huh, okay, it's a first-person shooter. A lot of you guys don't even remember that exists, huh? Alright. With full motion video too. Man, what a product of its era. Okay, well, as the story goes, the game simply wasn't financially successful for the company. And in an effort to make something more family-friendly to tackle the market that the Nintendo 64 had, you make a game with a young dragon with attitude. Boom. Show me the money. The story begins in the world of dragons. Man, even that phrase brings back memories. An interview is taking place in the world of the artisan dragons. Everything is all peaceful aside from this poor sheep. And the interviewer brings up the evil Gnasty Gnorc, who is trying to build up an evil army of minions. Another dragon steps in and calls him simple, no threat, and ugly. That last one, somehow being the final straw, causes Nasty to go on a rampage and shoot an evil spell from his scepter, encasing all of the elder dragons in crystal. Dragon-shaped crystal at that. Props to his designer mentality there, I like it. I guess Nasty is also watching this whole thing on TV or something. This interview is supposed to be taking place live. We don't really get to see him seeing it, but that's just my mind just assuming what goes on. Maybe he's just using magic, I don't know. Spyro, luckily, is able to avoid the spell due to his short size, so now it is up to him, along with his dragonfly buddy Sparks, to free all of the trapped dragons, capture all of the stolen treasure, rescue a bunch of dragon eggs, and stop Nasty Gnorc for good. Well, until he shows up again in Hero's Tale, where he looks like this thing. Then, the adventure begins, and we get tossed into the world for the very first time. And I am already in love. You see, I really like a good hub world in a 3D platformer, and Spyro's really shine in my opinion. Each one is a new dragon realm, featuring an entirely new aesthetic, and with it, a new style of dragons to save. Sure, a lot of the dragons within look very similar to each other, since this is the PlayStation 1 we're talking about here, not a whole lot you can do there, but it's really neat that, hey, we're saving these guys one by one. It's cool that they all match the location that we're saving them in. As for how you save the dragons, well, that's super simplistic. You see one? Okay, well then boom, that's about as simple as that. And going the extra mile here, each dragon is its own unique character, having a name that suits the fantasy style of the game as a whole, and fully voiced dialogue.
Fairies are always on your side, Spyro.
Oh yeah, thanks bro. Many of them give you hints and advice, such as how to glide, how to tackle some enemies and whatnot, but some of them...
Spyro, it's great to see you, but I've got to go.
What? Some of the dialogue really plays up Spyro being a kid in need of some advice from his elders. Sure, it is serious business here, we gotta save all the dragons that have been captured, but sometimes a kid just wants to have some fun, you know?
Cool Flash, do that again.
And of course, how can we forget about the fabled line, "Thank you for releasing me." This game is pretty ambitious for its time, it's great that there's any voice acting at all, but a lot of them just say that one line, and that's it. Some of them even share the same exact voice clip.
Thank you for releasing me.
Those crystallized dragons are the game's primary collectible, but there's also a handful of dragon eggs that you can retrieve by chasing and defeating these thieves. And they love to tease you too. Once they see you, they'll taunt you with a little bit of a... Oh yeah? Oh yeah, you think so, you little punk? Come here. And your reward for collecting all of these dragon eggs? Nothing? Okay, but there's also a ton of colored gems spread out everywhere, some even hidden within enemies. What about these then? Surely there's a collectible for getting these. As for whether or not this is a bad thing, that kinda depends on what you're okay with in a 3D platformer. The simple act of collecting things is a platforming pleasure, but what makes Spyro so special is how he plays. He is a cute and adorable purple dragon, and dragons are really cool. Dragons can do two things. They can use their wings to traverse locations a whole lot easier, and they can spit fire to vanquish their foes. Spyro can also charge endlessly too, which is just a ton of fun. At the push rope button, boom, there you go. until you run into a wall a million times. And this sort of plays into how you defeat the enemies as well. While they really don't pose much of a threat, they take advantage of Spyro's abilities. Some enemies have some sort of metal on them, so you can't flame them. And some are really big, so charging won't leave a dent. That's a pretty neat idea. You also got a bunch of these tiny creatures all over the place too, like lizards and sheep, all of which will spawn butterflies once defeated, which are used as food for Sparks to heal himself up, which his health is an indicator of how much damage you've taken. So butterflies are healing up a dragonfly who somehow is transferring his life force and energy to a dragon. I can work with that. Sparks also helps you collect stuff. It's an interesting collect-a-thon idea. As long as you're not inches away from death, Sparks will help you collect things, so you yourself don't have to touch the gems. He can go out and get them for you as long as they're nearby. That's really cool. It's like a reward for playing the game well, but if you're constantly on the verge of dying, the punishment isn't that bad. It just incentivizes you to get more health. The game really tries to go out of your way to make you feel like a dragon. That's why you're even collecting gems in the first place. According to mythology, dragons loved to collect and hoard treasure. So, breaking open treasure chests and snagging the gems makes a whole lot of sense. It's a great touch. That is an attention to detail that many games don't even attempt to strive for. Rescuing dragon eggs and collecting treasure makes sense for Spyro as a character, but there's no real reason to go after them in terms of gameplay, aside from the sheer satisfaction of taking out those thieves. And that's not to say that every level is the same, mind you. Each one gives off a different set of platforms and challenges to tackle, as you would expect, usually sporting a unique gimmick as well. Sometimes you'll find these supercharged floors that let you charge up super fast. One level has a fairy that gives you this powerful fire breath to take down these moving suits of armor. That kind of scared me when I was a kid, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes it's something as simple as a special room hidden underground, and then there's treetops. This level gets a lot of flack, but personally, I'm totally fine with it. It's a pretty crazy combination of floating platforms and supercharged floors, so it did lead to some, admittedly, childhood trauma, but playing it nowadays, it's not that bad. But I'll be damned, I still die often. Each hub world acts as its own level as well, with its own set of gems and dragons to find, and within them is another special level. So, Spyro can't fly normally, he can only just glide. However, that's where the flight levels come in. These are some of the best parts of the game. These are iconic to the Spyro franchise. The objective is pretty simple. There are 4 sets of 8 objects spread throughout the level, and you have a time limit to get all of them, with each one that you get giving you just a few extra seconds of time. And what's nice is that they're not necessarily a scavenger hunt. Typically, if you just go in a straight line, you're gonna hit all 4 sets in one go anyway. It's really just a matter of how fast you can do it without messing up. I just really love these, man. They really add to the idea of Spyro having great control, and these are extra little challenges that you can compare your times with your friends, which I definitely did back in the day. I always look forward to these in my playthroughs to get the best time that I could. Boss fights are a thing too, but oh boy, they're really easy. I mean, if you couldn't really grasp this by now, the game as a whole is a bit of a breeze. Not much challenge in terms of enemies or collecting. It's a simple adventure from start to finish, but the bosses, in particular, are pathetic. They all really just consist of chasing them down with a little bit of platforming and flaming them multiple times, with very slight variations throughout. The character designs are pretty neat, you know, it's a giant robot with a mohawk, that's pretty cool. And one of them is named Blowhard, which, you know what, I don't care how old I'm ever gonna get, that's just gonna consistently make me giggle. Its name is Blowhard, for crying out loud. But really, some more varied, unique, and some imposing boss fights would have been so much better. I really think it would have helped if this game took more of a Yoshi's Island approach to the bosses. You simply take some common enemies, buff them up, and give them the guise of a big baddie. That's kind of how Toasty is. You burn a bunch of sheep as fodder throughout the adventure, one of them gets pissed off and wants revenge. Boom, boss fight. And difficulty is not something I personally need in a platformer. I mean, look who's talking here, I'm obsessed with Kirby, you could have assumed I felt that way. but it can very easily feel more like busy work than genuine fun and satisfaction. The nostalgia keeps me enjoying this game from beginning to end, but that can only last so long. At least the levels are pretty short. I mean, fully completing them can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. That's it, and there's no backtracking in sight. Now, I'm not necessarily praising short levels here, but if they're as empty and repetitive as they can be sometimes, at least you're jumping between them pretty frequently. And dude, the best part of the game by far is the aesthetic. I love how this game looks. These wide and varied landscapes all evoke that feeling of exploring a fantasy world, and I am a big sucker for a platformer that has each level standing out strongly on its own, and that is exactly what we have here. Each world has its own individual style. Artisans is a bright and colorful countryside, Peacekeepers is a canyon covered by a military camp, Magic Crafters is at the top of a bunch of icy mountains, Beastmakers is a dark and gloomy swamp, and Dreamweavers consists of floating platforms, some holding a large castle. And the use of colors. Wow, the skyboxes are amazing, the color used for the platforms and the enemies are amazing. For as janky as PS1 games can look, this one still holds up really well in my opinion. And then there's the soundtrack. Oh man, composed by Stuart Copeland, the drummer from The Police. Oh man, it's so good. The music goes for catchy ambience, and it totally nails that. They're not really tracks that I would go out of my way to jam out to, but ones that fit the worlds they're in perfectly, and they feel Spyro-y, if that made any sense. Except for that title screen track, that tune, that one's bumpin'. Eventually, Spyro and Sparks make their way to Nork Nexus, Nasty's world, a tiny island in the middle of nowhere, housing your final challenges. You also save Delbin again. How? Apparently he tried to face Nasty Nork himself and then got trapped again. The child is here to save the day. Grown-ups will just never understand. Actually, all of the dragons that you save in this world are ones that we've saved before. Okay, it's a bit odd to say that there are 80 dragons to save then, but okay, sure, I'll roll with it. Oh, and they also screwed up the coloring for Cletus here. Cool. Some of the enemies here also just straight up use legitimate firearms on you. My god, relax. They're trying to turn Spyro into Swiss cheese here. Wow, how is this allowed? The 90s. But soon enough, Spyro finally comes face to face with Nasty Nork himself. And, so, you remember how I said that all of the bosses are just, you know, you chase them down and then you hit them a couple times with the fire? Okay, so that's exactly how Nasty Nork is too. You chase him down twice, not even 3 times, and that's it. Okay then, that was the game. Oh hey, now it's Spyro's turn to get interviewed. He was the hero after all. Things are peaceful in the Dragon Kingdom once again. Although there is still some treasure to find, and thus, we have a reward for beating the final boss, Nasty's Loot. A level filled to the brim with treasure, and it's just up to you to traverse through all of the locked doors to get to them. Ending off at... oh my god, it's beautiful. I love this stage so much. So many games, in my opinion, don't give you this fulfilling reward for all of your hard work, but a sandbox where you get to just play around and fly infinitely and collect the most amount of treasure in a single stage with no real threat? That's so good. Spyro is now on top of the world, rocking these super tubular shades here, and the game also kind of ends on a cliffhanger. The dragons get recrystallized and that's it. Despite the sequel not having a single thing to do with captured dragons. Okay. And I can't forget to talk about the credits. These are really cool too. Instead of having text just scroll by, there's these really cool fly-through shots of all of the levels in the game, with some more of that catchy music. A really great end to the game. No sheep were harmed during the adventure, huh? And yeah, that is the first Spyro the Dragon, a game that has a lot going for it, but is definitely bogged down by easy difficulty, really barren levels. Also, can't forget to mention this, fun fact, there is a demo for Crash 3 Warped accessible on the title screen. It may seem weird, but you gotta remember, Naughty Dog and Insomniac Games had a really great partnership back in the day. So much so that if you play Crash 3, there's a demo of Spyro 1 in there too, accessed in almost the same way. Really not a big deal by today's standards, I just think it's really neat. It's a cool part of PlayStation history. SpongeBob SquarePants is just as much of a video game character as any other, but obviously in this instance there is a huge cartoon legacy behind him, and some of the newer stuff, but specifically the older stuff, some of the first few seasons in their entirety, still hilarious. You know, I'm pretty confident that the number 25 is ruined for me. There's no saving it. For the rest of my life, it's gonna be the funniest thing because it's more funny than 24. That's it. That's all I need to know. When looking back at gaming history, whenever a cartoon entered the world of video games, you would see 1 or 2 titles release, and then everybody would move on, pretending like it didn't happen, and that franchise would never get a game again. Yo listen, Ed, Edd n Eddy The Misadventures is jank as all hell, and I love it as a result, but you are not gonna hear me beg for a sequel, I will tell you that much. Good God, Kevin, what happened to your head? SpongeBob is different though, because that show had such massive success. This may come off as a bit of a surprise, but there's a lot of video games based on the world of Bikini Bottom. This doesn't even come close to all of them. Oh, what's that? You're working on a pretty garbage 2D platformer on the Game Boy Color? Throw SpongeBob in there. We got nothing else going on. When the year 2003 came around, we were on the cusp of a paradigm shift. Revenge of the Flying Dutchman already existed, and reception was expected. But now we bring in Heavy Iron Studios, a relatively unknown developer at the time, to helm the next main console title, Battle for Bikini Bottom. Now obviously, this game specifically got the remake treatment despite there being like a dozen other games to choose from, so this one must be pretty good, right? Well, whether or not you're interested in Rehydrated, I think it's important to take a look at the original game here, for not only being a licensed game that's actually worth a damn, but also for being a collectathon platformer that came out in an age where that genre was slowly going out of style. Oh, but what about Battle for Bikini Bottom on PC? Yeah, no, I don't think so. But what about Battle for Bikini Bottom on GBA? Yeah, okay, I'm gonna pass on that one too. We're gonna stick to the pure console experience on this journey. We have a pretty easy to understand plotline to get this adventure going as well. Plankton's robots are going out on a rampage across Bikini Bottom. Go stop them. That's it. That's all we got. Oh, and golden spatulas are the key to saving the day, because of course they are.
Oh, how shellfish of you.
Oh, I take it back. This game sucks. And this premise is a good thing. Rather than being based on a specific episode or something, it's a story that sounds like it could be an episode, and it's really just an excuse to see as many different locations as possible, while also sprinkling in some references here or there. Like SpongeBob looking horrifying when running through Sandy's waterless home. Good times. It's really nice to be exploring this world and controlling these characters without feeling like I'm playing through a plot that I've already experienced before. And speaking of those different locations, they are definitely a huge source of fan service to fans of old school SpongeBob. You start off running through jellyfish fields to encounter King Jellyfish. You run around every inch of the beach at Goo Lagoon. You get to mess around with the inner mechanics of the Mermalayer. That in particular was pretty awesome, even if this ball rolling puzzle made me want to rip my hair out. That wasn't fun. And the final level, SpongeBob's Dream, is more or less a series of floating platforms surrounded by cool imagery. It's really neat.
And now back to your regular programming. Retirement Home Girls Gone Wild.
As much as I would love to see that, truly I would. I'm scheduled to be in a coma in 5 minutes and I wouldn't want to miss that. But let's be honest, the fan service is the easy part. Like, have you ever seen the show before? Cool, here's SpongeBob missing the bus out of Rock Bottom. That'll be $50. Oh hey, Caveman SpongeBob. The developers predicted a meme all those years beforehand. That's pretty impressive. When it comes to satisfying fans of the franchise, the only part that was kinda weird is Mr. Krabs' voice.
No more Krusty Krab means no more fry cooking for you.
Yeah, that ain't Krabs. That's so weird. Why didn't you guys get the voice for Mr. Krabs? The same goes for Mermaid Man. They're both done in this game by the same voice actor, and neither of them sound like how they're supposed to. Is there a reason why that happened?
Don't ask questions you aren't prepared to handle the answer to.
Ah, good point. But more importantly in this instance is wrapping that fan service in a fun game. And yeah, they nailed it. So at its core, we have a pretty standard collectathon here. Every level has 8 golden spatulas to obtain, socks from Patrick's collection that he lost somehow, which can be traded back to him to get even more spatulas, and all the money you collect can be used to get spatulas as well, but this time you trade to Mr. Krabs instead. That just makes sense. Maybe use that money to get a brand new mattress there, Krabs. Criminy Jim, my man, you look so tired. And you also get a handful of new abilities to help you out on your travels as well, with some of them being the key to a mission that you couldn't do initially in a previous level. This is really checking off all the boxes here. This is, by all accounts, a super solid 3D platformer. We all know play control is at the utmost importance, right? Well, there are 3 different characters to control, each with their own pros and cons, and in a pretty smart move, while you always can play as SpongeBob, whether or not you can change to either Patrick or Sandy is different on a level-by-level basis, which allows for challenges specifically built around their own mechanics. So diversifying the playable roster was handled really well, and thankfully, they all play really well too. Sandy is by far my favorite of the bunch, just because she can use her lasso and swing between these floating symbols of Texas. That's really funny, actually. I'm a big fan of momentum-based platforming, and this here, oh, it feels really good. We also have a handful of sliding segments too, and these are easily my favorite parts of the entire adventure. It is so much fun bobbing and weaving down these trails, trying to discover all the secrets spread throughout them, and getting to the end as fast as possible. It's awesome. And the devs knew it too. There's an entire stage based around it with Sand Mountain. It's so cool. And in between each chunk of 3 levels is a boss fight against a robotic form of one of the playable characters. And like everything else in this game, these showcase a really good use of the character's unique abilities. Each one is a multi-staged fight, and each stage within that fight usually has you control a new character or do something entirely new. These are some high-quality boss fights, not gonna lie. They're not hard, but they're still fun. Oh, and man, did I forget to mention that there are a handful of extra goodies to be found throughout the entire hub world as well? Everything here within Battle for Bikini Bottom is so well constructed. How does that feel, SpongeBob?
I think I have fudge in my pants.
Alright, this game is disgusting. All that being said though, there are definitely a few little nitpicks that stop this game from being one of the true greats. For example, some of the missions don't feel as polished as they should be, like the aforementioned ball rolling puzzle. That thing really sucks, like really bad. It takes so long to get the ball from point A to point B, and one slight mistake, you gotta do it all over again. It's bad. It's really bad. And as enjoyable as sliding is, one of the challenges is to get to the bottom in a time limit in one go, which is fine, but if you fall off the stage a fair amount in, you pop back up halfway through and the timer is gone, and you can't just restart back to the beginning. So you have to finish that current ride, walk up to the start, and do it all over again. It's a very odd oversight, especially since this one in particular is incredibly easy to fall off the stage. This one took me a good dozen tries to get right. And then we have the entirety of Kelp Forest, my least favorite level in the game. Visually, it's bland. Design-wise, there's a lot of going back and forth if you try to go for everything. It is unquestionably the low point of the adventure. The enemy types could also use a bit of extra variety. You see the same small handful of enemies from start to finish. It's not a huge deal, but it does make things less interesting from a visual perspective, especially since each level themselves is very visually distinct from each other. And I mean, you can honestly argue that graphically, this game has its quirks too. Mouth movements are far from good, but I'll still give this game the benefit of the doubt, being an early 2000s licensed game. And on top of all that, the completion bonuses are pretty underwhelming as well. Getting every golden spatula nets you a video of all the characters singing the SpongeBob theme. That's it. And getting 40,000 40,000? My god! Gets you a reel of concept art. It's really nothing special at all, but like other games of this genre, it's all about the journey, not so much the destination. And ultimately, it is still a really fun ride. Any slight nitpicking I throw in here is not going to take away from the fact that this game is simply a lot of fun. If you're not a fan of SpongeBob, this is a simple, solid 3D platformer. But if you are a fan, especially of this era of SpongeBob, the best time to play Battle for Bikini Bottom is all the time. And also the final battle, a gauntlet inside of a giant robotic SpongeBob, is really cool, so who am I to complain, really? Oh, but taking a look back at the concept art, what's this here? A robotic Squidward? That doesn't appear in the game at all. It's another example of something neat getting cut before the game ships. Well, until Rehydrated promised to bring that fight back, as well as other cut content, and even a multiplayer horde mode. Battle for Bikini Bottom on GameCube, PS2, and Xbox, a whole lot of fun. But the way Rehydrated is looking, I'm ready. So yeah, if you thought a random SpongeBob game getting the remake treatment seemed sort of weird and unnecessary, hopefully this showed you that isn't the case. Battle for Bikini Bottom is definitely deserving of a modern adaptation. But that being said, the original still holds up. If you're a fan of GameCube and PS2 era platformers, check this game out. It'll be worth your time.